Hello, a very good morning. It's 7 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Breaking news this morning, 45-year-old Essa Suleiman is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in North London.
The national terror threat level raised to severe. The public are urged to be vigilant, not alarmed.
Sky News uses exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in southern Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
New footage of the shooter at the Correspondents' Dinner in DC is released, showing him scoping out the venue and then rushing through security.
We're going to be looking at the new raft of rights for renters that comes into force today and why some landlords say the new rules go too far.
And Jackie will be here with all of the sport after a penalty gives Forest the advantage against Villa in the first leg of the Europa League semi-final.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for being with us today. And we start this morning with breaking news because a 45-year-old man has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after the stabbing of 2 men in North London. Well, we can go straight to Amelia Harper, who's in Golders Green for us now. So, Amelia, what can you tell us?
Yeah, in the last few moments, Essa Suleiman has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after 2 Jewish men were stabbed here in Golders Green in North London a few days ago. He's also been charged with possessing a knife in public. This is someone who is a British national born in Somalia, and he's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later today. And just to remind our viewers of what happened here a few days ago, 2 Jewish men were stabbed in an attack. Police were called at around 11:15 a.m. The first victim is 34-year-old Shloime Rand, who has now been released from hospital. The second victim, 76-year-old Moshe Shine. And in the wake of what has happened yesterday, the UK's terror threat level was raised to severe. Now, this means that a terror attack is highly likely within the next 6 months. And this was a decision that was made by a group called the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre. They sit within MI5, but they are independent of the government, and they are a group which assesses the terror threat level here in the UK, and they have said that this decision was made not just because of the attack that happened here in Golders Green, but because of what they're saying is a rising terror risk in the UK, and that's been seen over the last, however many weeks and months, driven by Islamist and extreme right-wing terror threats from individuals and groups based within the UK. And the last time that the threat level was raised to this level was back in November 2021 in the wake of 2 incidents which happened in very close succession. The first one being an attack, a bombing at a women's hospital in Liverpool, and the second one being an attack on the MP Sir David Amess, who was murdered in his constituency surgery. This attack has obviously prompted incredible stress for the Jewish community, and this is something that has been acknowledged by the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. In an address at Downing Street, he said that the Jewish community were scared, and he has urged the public to, in his words, open their eyes to Jewish pain. The government has said it has pledged an additional £25 million to help protect the Jewish community in the UK, and that is money that will go towards protection outside of schools, outside of synagogues, those types of things. And actually yesterday as well, the Prime Minister was heckled by some protesters when he visited the scene. One of the chants was Keir Starmer, Jew Harmer. We are due to hear from the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, later on Sky News. But that news just in, that Essa Suleiman has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder.
OK, Amelia, for now, in Gold Screen. Thank you for that. Of course, more from Amelia and team throughout the day here on Sky News. Now, as Amelia was saying, the terror threat here has now been raised to severe from substantial for the first time since 2021, meaning another attack is considered highly likely and, of course, follows on from the stabbing that we were just reporting on.
Well, we've spoken to the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, and he gave us his view on the impact that pro-Palestine protests could have been having on the rise in extremism.
All of these marches have had in them expressions of hatred, and I think the Prime Minister was right today to say, yeah, it may not be every person who's carrying something saying globalise the Intifada, but the people who are standing next to them are not exactly saying stop it. So I think that a moratorium on pro-Palestine marches is the right thing to do, because otherwise there is a risk that some new individual will look at what people are saying publicly and getting away with saying publicly, and they'll go, well, I know what, I've got to do something about those people. I've got to do something about those Jews and those Zionists and those Israelis. I've got to take my own personal steps.
As Jonathan Hall speaking to us yesterday. Now, a little bit later on this morning, as Amelia mentioned, we are going to speak to Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. He'll be joining us here live in the studio at 8:15.
Now, Sky News has used exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in southern Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
Yeah, the equivalent of 50,000 homes have been destroyed over weeks of bombardment, wiping out entire villages. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, reports.
This isn't Gaza, this is Lebanon, and just some of the dozens of villages in the south that have been virtually wiped out by Israel in a matter of weeks. All done, according to Israel, to eradicate Hezbollah from the border area. Most of the IDF activity has been concentrated between the Lebanese-Israel border and what Israel is calling a forward defense line.
We will clean Hezbollah and its supporters from southern Lebanon with security control of the IDF over the entire Litani area.
The Israeli military has claimed it's targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. But what we're seeing on the ground looks like a much broader strategy to permanently clear this area of Lebanon. And there's a growing body of visual evidence.
It is a kind of national ethnic cleansing, what is happening there.
The ceasefire is in name only. Both sides deny it. Both sides accuse the other of breaching it. And the Lebanese army cites Israeli bombing on a daily basis. Still, the demolitions go on apace, and Hezbollah is continuing its attacks. As part of this investigation, we worked with the independent investigative outlet Centre for Information Resilience. The centre found at least 29 villages have suffered extensive damage since the 2nd of March. That was the day Hezbollah fired 6 rockets on Israel in support of Tehran. In reality, most of these villages and all the homes in them have been razed. Most sit roughly 10 kilometres inside Lebanese territory, a swathe of land which Israel is calling its security zone and has marked out with a yellow line. To assess the scale of destruction from a bird's eye view, we turned to data scientists at the University of Oregon. By analysing satellite imagery, they found at least 2,154 buildings across Lebanon were destroyed in Israeli attacks between the 28th of February and the 13th of April. Lebanese officials say that amounts to more than 50,000 housing units. Sky News' own analysis found that nearly half of that damage is outside the self-declared Israeli security zone. We verified footage circulating online from villages inside the Israeli so-called buffer zone that show not only airstrikes, but massive controlled demolitions, wiping out entire neighbourhoods, including homes, roads and schools. Controlled demolitions have very different characteristics to airstrikes. Weapons analysts told us a cable is often seen lighting up right before the explosion. The impact is also very distinct in terms of scale and projection of the blast, as well as the way the buildings collapse. The IDF told us it takes all feasible measures to protect civilians. They replied to our queries about the high number of civilian deaths and the widespread destruction of civilian buildings by saying it issued advanced warnings of strikes. And they insist it only destroys military objectives, although it rarely provides evidence to support these claims. Without detailing the absolute military necessity for destroying the homes, the schools and mosques which are being levelled, there could be further violations of international law. The IDF insists its troops are only in Lebanon right now to protect Israeli citizens from Hezbollah and will remain there until the group is destroyed. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
Well, at 7:30, we're going to speak to Sana Basim from the charity Islamic Relief Lebanon, all about the situation as shown there by Alex and the situation facing Lebanese people right now.
Now, the Trump administration is claiming the US-Iran ceasefire, which began in early April, has terminated hostilities with Iran, arguing that the war has ended.
Yeah. Trump faced a deadline of today to end the war or be forced to make the case to Congress to extend it. But the conflict looks set to continue regardless, with the US blockade of the Strait of Hormuz still in place.
Well, meanwhile, the King wrapped up his 4-day visit to the US with a mission to mend what's become a strained relationship across the Atlantic.
Well, the tour for the King, though, continues. He's not here yet. He's in Bermuda, marking his first visit to a British overseas territory as King. The visit to the US was warmly received by President Trump, and he even, after conversations with King Charles, lifted tariffs on Scottish whisky, which Buckingham Palace said it would toast with a dram. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
So your journey is almost over.
Warm words, a fond farewell, and for the president, certainly one special relationship he cherishes. Does the King feel the same way? We'll never know, but he's charmed the White House at a time of tension between Britain and the US. At Arlington Cemetery, a moment to remember the fallen from the Civil War to more modern conflict. And then to Virginia's aptly named Front Royal. Remarkably, this town's the first time the couple have met the crowds. 250 years ago, they probably wouldn't have welcomed the King like this. But here now, a block party celebrating America's birthday. So you write to the Queen?
Yes, probably a number of people do. And she's very kind to write back. And I'm so terribly fond of her, really, and so fond of the King. I don't know why I say really, it's not the least bit surprising. They spend so much time doing things that really matter.
I think they both exemplify so much civility that you don't see in all phases of government right now.
If the King and Queen were wondering what Americans made of them, here at least there's little doubt. One thing's clear, this state visit has been great PR for the palace, a personal win for the King after so much negativity around Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The King's speeches were well received and widely praised. He delivered the diplomatic message. But the bigger question, politically, will this trip make any difference? So it's been a busy 4 days, so much to see, but also so much to carefully say in what's been his most significant state visit to date. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Virginia.
Well, meanwhile, newly released CCTV has revealed just how quickly a gunman charged through security outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which Donald Trump was attending. Yeah, the footage shows the man rushing through the security checkpoint, giving officers just moments to draw their weapons. 31-year-old Cole Allen is facing charges of attempting to assassinate President Trump at that White House Correspondents' Dinner. He is yet to enter a plea. And Anna, I was on the morning of this. Yeah. It was a Sunday morning, Saturday night in the US into Sunday morning here, and just extraordinary. We have the CCTV footage. This is the first time I've seen the sort of the clear colour footage of this individual who was rushing in to potentially
attack the Trump administration and others in the room. We had colleagues in the room who were having to cower under the tables as they heard the shots being fired outside in the lobby. So this individual hasn't yet offered a plea. His next hearing is due on the 11th of May, but he's charged with 3 counts of attempted assassination of the president, interstate transportation of a firearm. He travelled from California to DC to do this, and discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence. Yeah,
fascinating pictures, though, and
Absolutely.
The speed at which he's running through there. Now, let's turn our attention back here, because millions of private renters in England are going to be benefiting from new protections which come into force today.
Yes, bringing our up-to-score Alex Rogers for more on this. Alex, morning to you. So tell us about this law. I mean, it's long talked about, but now it's finally in force.
Coming into force, yeah. The big one is the Section 21 notices. So landlords can't evict a tenant without real valid justification. Lots of people have been calling for this because it's a key driver of homelessness. But there's lots in this Renters' Rights Act. So I'm going to read out some of them for you. So under the Act, landlords cannot increase rent more than once a year, and they cannot ask for more than a month's rent in advance. It'll also put an end to bidding wars between prospective tenants, because it was getting to the point where people felt that they had to bid more than they could actually afford just to secure a room, because demand has been so high and supply has been falling. Landlords also won't be able to refuse tenants who have children or claim benefits. And to give tenants a bit more flexibility, they'll be able to roll on their contract month to month or week to week, and they'll be able to end them with 2 months' notice. So it's a real boost for renters' rights. And I think, interestingly, Angela Rayner has given an interview with the Eye, where she's warned that young people are feeling increasingly hopeless, and more young people are feeling there isn't investment in their future now. And I think housing and renting is such a big part of that. This Act, I think, is the government's way of saying, you know, if young people are effectively locked out of the housing market, we need to do something to improve their renting situation at least.
There are some, though, that are raising the issue that landlords might just think, do you know what, it's too difficult for us now. We've got other costs as well as these restrictions. And they might just think, do you know what, I'm getting out. I'm going to sell up. And the fear then is there'd be fewer properties available for renters, and that could push prices up. What do you make of that criticism?
That is the risk, that the more you increase powers for renters, the more landlords just think, oh, is it worth it? Is it going to be harder for me to get rid of tenants I don't want, harder for me to sell my home? And I think that's also a key argument against rent controls as well, which is also doing the rounds as something to try and help young people with the cost of living too.
Yeah, it gets into that sort of generational fairness argument once again. Alex, thanks so much for that.
Thanks, Alex. Well, let's get more now on the news that the terror threat level in this country has been raised to severe last night. We can get more on that with the Justice Minister, Alex Davies-Jones, who's here with me now. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much
good morning.
For chatting to us this morning. So the UK's terror threat raised then to severe from substantial, meaning that a terror attack is highly likely. This is going to be very worrying for members of the public. So how should people respond?
So the message this morning is that the public should be alert but not alarmed. This is an operational decision to ensure that all of the community is kept safe across the United Kingdom. The government's first priority is to its citizens to keep us all safe, and this is to ensure that the police have the resources and tools available in order to do just that.
So, but what exactly should they do? Should they be changing their behaviour? You said they should be alert. What should they be looking out for?
So it's about being aware of any suspicious activity, being mindful of certain types of behaviour, and reporting any suspicious behaviour to the police. Ultimately, that is what we are encouraging the public to do.
And was the threat level raised because of any specific intelligence about a specific attack?
So obviously the attack in Golders Green earlier this week was utterly horrific, and that has fed into the decision to raise the threat level, but it was also raised because of other intelligence regarding hostile actors who seek to cause us harm in the country, and that is why the decision was made independently to raise the threat level in order to keep us all safe. But as I've said, this is an operational decision for the security services in order to keep us all safe.
And you talk about the threats to just the Jewish community, or are there other factors at play here as well?
This is a threat to all of us, and an attack on the Jewish community is an attack on all of us. It's an attack on Britain, it's an attack on our values, our way of life, and I would just want to state that this is for everyone. across the country to be aware of, that there are those out there who seek to cause us harm, who seek to damage our way of life, and that this is for the police and security services to keep us safe.
The Prime Minister visited Golders Green yesterday, the scene of the stabbings, and was met with heckling. One of the phrases shouted at him was "Keir Starmer, Jew harmer." One of the victims of the attack says he feels let down, says the government hasn't been doing its job properly of making people feel safe. Do you understand that strength of feeling that people don't feel safe?
I do. I do understand that strength of feeling, and I have all of the sympathies for a community that is reeling in fear, in grief, in trauma. I was at Heaton Park in Manchester after the attack there, and again we were met with very similar anger and grief. And the community are tired. They have told me directly that enough words. We need action now. The time for thoughts and prayers is over. And this doesn't just need a response, this needs a fundamental solution. And I want to reiterate to the Jewish community that the government is listening and we are taking that action across society to root out anti-Semitism, because it has no place in our country.
Well, yes, and the Prime Minister talked about lots of steps he wants to take. So essentially, is that an admission that you haven't done enough to tackle anti-Semitism in this country?
I think, yes, it is. We all need to do more to tackle anti-Semitism, given the rising levels that it is occurring here. It's totally unacceptable. And we all have a duty, on all of us, to look at what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're behaving, in terms of how this is making certain communities and individuals feel in our country.
So we saw the Prime Minister there in a Jewish community yesterday. Should it be more visible before an attack?
I think the Prime Minister has been visible. He's been trying to reassure the community that we are taking that action that we need to. He has been very forthright on refusing to take us into a war that is not of our making in Iran. We have been a leading voice on the situation in the Middle East to resolve conflict there and to try to diffuse tensions that are arising in communities as a result of that. But what I would say is that we're not resting on our laurels here. It is important that we do take that action, whether that is in our healthcare, whether that is in education, whether that is across society, whether that's online, in order to ensure that anti-Semitism is rooted out from our country.
The independent reviewer of terrorism, Jonathan Hall, has been talking about the role that pro-Palestine marches could potentially be playing in feeding anti-Semitism. He's called for a moratorium, a temporary ban on them. What do you make of that?
I would say that the right to protest is a fundamental one in our country, and it is one that I am proud that we have and one that I will fiercely defend and protect. But ultimately, we have seen these marches be hijacked by certain individuals who are seeking to cause and sow division and hatred in our country. And I would say to anyone that is seeking to march at the moment to please reflect on what is happening in our country, how certain communities and individuals are feeling. And as I've said, it is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that we do better, that we are good citizens, and that we seek to prevent any cause of hatred, alarm, distress or intimidation at this time or whenever.
But you're not looking to ban the marches?
We will take action if we need to, and the Home Secretary did ban a march just last month to prevent that dangerous alarm, intimidation and threat that I've talked about. So the government will take action where necessary, whilst also ensuring that we do protect people's rights to freedom of protest, to ensure that they are reflecting the views of certain individuals in our country. I think that is important that we protect that too.
The Prime Minister has said he's looking at what more could be done around marches. He'd mentioned chants, banners, the repeated nature of protests. So what exactly is being considered?
So just this week, the Crime and Policing Act has become law, which has meant that we now have the power to prevent marches that are being repeated constantly in certain areas and certain communities that are causing alarm and distress, whether that be outside schools, churches, synagogues, for example. So we do have those new powers. We are ensuring that we bring forward legislation at pace to prescribe the IRGC, for example. We've taken action on chanting. Calls for death in the street are unacceptable, whoever they are, and the police are and will be taking action where that is occurring. And it is a duty on all of us, as I've said, to check our behaviour, and we have a responsibility to keep everyone safe.
I mean, it's a really tricky problem, isn't it? I mean, how do you tackle something that's become a social problem? How do you tackle people's beliefs, as they now are amongst some people? How do you do that? And will people listen to a government?
So we root it out by its source. It's about ensuring that we take every action available to us via training, via working in education, via healthcare. There are a number of important reviews taking place at the moment across government, led by very experienced peers. For example, Lord John Mann, the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, is doing a review into the NHS to ensure that our doctors and our healthcare professionals are not being blinded by anti-Semitism or racism of any kind, that our education systems, whether that be universities or schools, are not becoming breeding grounds for hatred, and are rather, it's important that they have that free debate to look at different ideas and positions, but that they are not being pushed content online via really dangerous algorithms that is inciting racial hatred in our country.
Reviews are one thing, but they're looking into the future. The results won't come for a while. So what do you say to parents this morning who are nervous about putting their children in the uniform for a Jewish school and worrying about their safety?
I would say I totally understand the fear there. As a mother myself, I cannot imagine how that feels. And it's important that we have a duty to keep everyone safe, and we need to reassure and do more. And that is why the government is determined to not rest on our laurels here, to take the action that we need to, including fast-tracking legislation if necessary, working with our criminal agency partners to ensure that justice is brought swiftly for anyone carrying out this behaviour and these attacks, and that we do all we can to root out anti-Semitism from the country.
OK, well, Alex Davis-Jones, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, we are going to be speaking to Sana Basim from Islamic Relief Lebanon about the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hezbollah after this break, so don't go away.
With respect, Minister, answer the question. It's you. Hello and welcome, I'm Cathy Newman. So could the outcome of these elections be manipulated? New me, new show, new furniture. Hard news needs a hard chair. I feel like I'm in therapy. Oh, there's room for two on this one. Do you think people will take me seriously with my feet up?
Sorry, madam, but we're closing now.
Oh, sorry. Sofa sorted. Let's get this show on the road.
thanks for staying with us. Now, as you saw a little earlier, Sky News has been looking at the destruction across southern Lebanon caused by the IDF.
Yeah, using data and forensic analysis, it looks at damage to towns and villages and raises questions about demolitions along the border, described by some experts as potential war crimes. Well, aid organisations are also responding to the growing humanitarian need, and we can speak to one of them now. Sana Basim is Head of Programmes at Islamic Relief Lebanon and joins us now. Very good morning. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning. So get us up to date with what the situation is now, with 1 million people displaced in Lebanon and attacks continuing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So when it comes to humanitarian crisis, it's devastating at the moment now. More than 1 million people are still displaced. 2,500 people have been killed, 7,000 to 8,000 people have been injured. And now people are completely, it's been almost 2 months now that people are completely dependent on the humanitarian aid. They are, just to remind you, that they are living in shelters, which are most of the time overcrowded. Sometimes they are living in a situation which is not very comfortable, or sometimes they are living on their own, like, by the road or by the sea in a camping tent or something like that. So the security situation, the GPV concern, it's the concern are growing a lot now.
And Sana, good morning, it's Kamali here. We can see pictures of aid being distributed now. The need is great. Is there enough aids for those that need it? And how is it getting in and how is it being distributed?
So it is distributed in a very coordinated way, and we are very the government of Lebanon is taking a lead role in this. Ministry of Social Affairs and all the organizations are coordinating with them. The thing is, even humanitarian organization has a capacity. Now they are also overstretched because of this 2 months displacement. The people are completely dependent on humanitarian assistance. Even we are, like, organizations are coordinating with each other to provide daily meals to them. So even for the daily meals, they are dependent. Even for water, we are providing them. So the humanitarian aid is coming, but again, it is not enough as compared to the destruction, as compared to the displacement and the level of destruction we are seeing now.
Clearly, the physical needs for people are huge, the need for shelter, for food, for water. But what about the psychological needs as well? How damaging is this to people psychologically? And many children caught up in this as well.
Yeah, so when it comes to psychological need, it is not only the people who are displaced and sometimes displaced many times, but also, children who are there. There is no school, health workers who have been targeted many times, journalists who have been attacked, humanitarian workers or the frontline respondent. So everyone is very psychologically distressed. They are living constantly in the fear that they don't know what is going to happen or what is coming. Just to let you know that when the ceasefire was announced, there were people who wanted to go back and they traveled back. But when they saw the destruction and when they saw the infrastructure is completely gone, they don't have any choice rather than to come back.
And Sana, we're looking at the pictures and we've seen Alex's report from earlier. She compared some of the destruction to what was seen during the war in Gaza. What's your perspective on that, and how much of what we saw in Gaza is now being repeated, do you think, in the south of Lebanon?
Yeah, if you look at the destruction and the pattern of destruction, for example, now till now, more than 37,000 housing units have been damaged. When it comes to infrastructure of, for example, bridges, more than 9 bridges are completely gone now. So we are seeing that, the infrastructure is completely destroyed. And those places are not livable anymore. Even if the ceasefire exists or the truce prolong, but people going back, there is nothing there, and they need to rebuild all this infrastructure all over again.
OK, Sana Basim from Islamic Relief Lebanon. We do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for being with us, and all the best in your work.
Now, with the Holyrood election fast approaching, the SNP is on track to return to power for the 19th year.
Yeah, Labour is predicted to take a substantial blow to their fortunes, with Reform making sizable gains, it's predicted.
But some voters aren't convinced with any option. Our political correspondent Rob Powell went to Hamilton, where the SNP first established itself as a political force, to find out what Scottish voters think.
Hamilton, in Scotland's central belt, the town where the SNP first burst onto the political landscape. That was the 60s. Now, after nearly 2 decades in government, the party's sitting pretty in the polls once more, despite mixed views on their time in power.
Hello, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, nice to meet you too.
For businesses, things have never been tougher.
Every single year it seems to get more challenging, particularly in the last 5, and it's all cost related. Particularly we've had increases in national insurance, you know, that's obviously had a ripple effect as well. We've had increases in utilities with other things that are going on, but actually a huge thing for us currently is business rates and business rates needing reform.
We have been here, it'll be 2 years in July.
Okay. Charities too say funding cuts have led to difficult choices.
We see on a weekly or possibly a daily basis the benefit that sport and leisure and recreation can have to people's lives. And I think many of the councils, just not locally here, but they've been left with a choice. Fund that or fund things like hospitals or whatever it is they're trying to fund. And unfortunately, leisure and recreation is missing out.
Labour's campaign HQ from last year. The party's seen better days, with turmoil in Westminster causing support in Scotland to fray.
We were here last June for a by-election when Labour took the seat from the SNP. Now, back then, Reform came a close third. Some polls are now putting them neck and neck with Labour. Independents seemingly taking a back seat as voters lash out at the main parties.
Everywhere's closed.
In terms of high street and businesses and things like that?
Businesses, high street, the rates are too high, everything's wrong. Someone needs to do something, you know, but everybody's good at talking and they ain't doing nothing.
Did you vote Labour a couple of years ago when it was the general election?
I did.
How do you think they've done so far then in the Westminster perspective?
Not good.
Why?
It's just they're letting everybody down.
The SNP have been in for sort of 20 years now, haven't they?
Well.
How do you think they've done?
OK. Put it that way, OK.
That anger means the Scottish Tories will have to work hard to defend past gains, though the Lib Dems and Greens are hoping for progress. But there's still limited optimism, whatever the outcome.
Hamilton was bustling, you know, when I was a youngster, which was not yesterday, but it was bustling, but it's the same across the board.
How optimistic are your members and the businesses you speak to about the future?
As optimistic as we've tried to be, there is a certain amount of pessimism just now. It's not that I wouldn't say that MD thinks that there's a silver bullet, there's no a magic wand that's coming in to resolve things. The pressures have been there for a long time.
Who takes Hamilton tends to take Holyrood. Voters still wanting change, but as unsure as ever who can deliver it. Rob Powell, Sky News in Hamilton.
All right, Rob Powell reporting that from Scotland. Let's get the Conservative Party's take on the day's news and the events that we've seen so far. David Reid, who is the Assistant Chief Whip, joins us now. David Reid, thanks very much for being with us. Of course, we've had
Good morning, lovely to be on.
Thanks for being with us. We've had a charge now in the case of the stabbing in North London, so we won't talk about that in detail. But I do want to talk to you about the raising of the terror level. Your leader, Kemi Badenoch, talked about a national emergency being called to try and deal with the anti-Semitism that we're seeing in the UK. The terror level has now been raised. What more do you think needs to be done to keep Jewish communities safe?
I've spoken to a lot of Jewish people in recent days and recent weeks, and I know that the Jewish community do not feel safe at the moment. And I think in large part, if we just look at what's been happening over the UK in recent months, there is a major difference between freedom of speech, something that I will defend till my dying days, and hate speech that turns then into physical violence and terrorism, issues that we've seen in recent days. So I think when we've seen a lot of these rallies and clearly anti-Semitic chants are called out, it needs to be stopped as quickly as possible. I think I just want to take the opportunity as well. There's been a lot of noise about the 2 police officers and how they apprehended the terrorist. I watched the video last night and I was in absolute awe. I think the word hero is probably banded around all too often in the UK, but to watch the courage and the bravery that those 2 officers showed, and they were normal bobbies, they weren't specialist counter-terrorism police officers, They went in there and they were truly heroic. And I've already said now that I will be writing in to make sure that they receive recognition for that bravery.
We may well come back to that point, David, later on in our conversation. We heard from the government just a short time ago talking about these upcoming marches on the 16th of May. There's a Nakba Day march. There's also a march called Unite the Kingdom, organised by Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who goes by the name Tommy Robinson, a far-right march. Are you concerned that the 16th of May, which is also FA Cup final day, could see the police massively overstretched?
No, I have full confidence in our police. I think there are things that can be done beforehand, and the government should probably step in to make sure that those marches go as peacefully as possible. But it goes back to that central point. There is a major difference between free speech and hate speech. And if that hate speech is evident, then it needs to be stamped out as quickly as possible.
Of course, you'll know, David, that many people on those marches do not describe themselves as committing hate speech. A small number of people have been arrested as a result of doing that sort of thing on those marches. You're aware, I guess, of the tension that there will be between the right to assembly, the democratic right that all of us have to use our voices to campaign against things that we think are wrong.
Of course. And look, I will always represent and support that democratic freedom. And for the vast majority of people that do go to these demonstrations, they are peaceful and they are not conducting hate speech. But for the small minority that do it, that needs to be stamped out as quickly as possible. And I hope that we give as much support to the Metropolitan Police and the government give the full support for them to take action if needs be.
David, you condemn the attack, and of course your leader has condemned the attack. Many in the political establishment have condemned what happened on Wednesday. Have you detected there being some resistance for some people to condemn the attack, to be sort of full-throated in their solidarity with the Jewish community?
I think seeing the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski's approach to the actions that the police officers took to apprehend the terrorist, and the fact that he hasn't come out strongly to condemn the attacks, I think for me is quite a dangerous force in our politics at the moment. It's very clear that the police officers did the best job they could in that situation. Complete bravery, completely courageous. And for the Green Party leader to not call that out, I think is quite damaging. I think we've also seen a number of different problems within the Green Party. I think 2 councillors have been arrested over anti-Semitic comments and actions. And I think the Green Party need to look inwardly now to make sure they understand that this is completely wrong and to stamp it out and call it out wherever they find it.
Yeah, of course, we don't have the Green Party here to defend those accusations. I do understand that those 2 people have been taken off the lists after those arrests we've made. And of course, as you well know, David, we can't talk about arrests once proceedings are active. But just on a sort of a broader point about the political temperature, isn't it incumbent on politicians at this stage of something like this, and with the threat that the Jewish community is under, to make sure that in all language you try and lower the temperature and not look to provoke, attack, provide scapegoats for anything?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think looking at Kemi Badenoch and how she's approached the situation and how she has approached leadership over the last 20-odd months of being elected, she is approaching it as a stateswoman. I think violence and raising tensions is cheap, and for any political leader that tries to do that, again, it needs to be called out as quickly as possible.
David, just on a final point, I know that the Conservatives are fully supportive of the idea of banning the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Kemi Badenoch thinks it could be done with a week. I don't know if you heard our conversation with the government minister earlier, who suggested they are moving forward legislation to try and do that. Talk to the parliamentary process. Why, at this stage, does it seem to be taking quite so long for that decision to be made?
So this is very much for the government to do. I think the way that we've seen them approach legislation over this parliamentary term, and obviously we're prorogued now, they have been extremely slow to do certain things. And I do think that they have pressure from elements of the Labour Party not to move quickly with this. But I think there is a chorus internationally now that the IRGC is a maligned influence. We've seen it for many decades now. We've seen it play out on our streets. And we do need to move forward with it.
OK. David Reid, MP Conservative, Assistant Whip. Appreciate your time this Friday. Thanks for being with us, David.
Thank you.
Let's take a look now. I think it's going to be hot, by the way. Good. The weather. Let's
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Hotter than Hawaii in Athens today,
Amazing.
apparently, I'm told. So plenty more warm sunshine. There will be some showers around, some of them thundery, and then it's going to turn cooler and more unsettled, of course, for the bank holiday weekend. I mean, that's just England for you, isn't it?
Typical.
Well, eastern Britain will see the best of the morning sunshine, while further west there'll be more cloud around. There'll be a few showers across western Britain, with more developing over parts of Ireland by lunchtime. After the recent blustery weather, winds will be much lighter, making it feel very warm, especially in the sunshine. And temperatures could climb to around 27 degrees Celsius in the muggy south.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
It's not a bad forecast, Anna.
I know. Punch the air. 27.
Until the bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, when it's very rainy.
Talking about punching the air.
I know. Forest fans all punching the air last night. It was a really good night, really good match last night between Forest and Aston Villa in Europe, and they have the upper hand going into the second leg next week, do Forest. Great night for Crystal Palace, so we'll look at the action from that. And also, Live Golf, the great disruptor of golf. Well, the Saudis have pulled their money. It's the worst kept secret in golf, but it's finally been confirmed with a press release yesterday. So we'll talk about that because Donald Trump has also been talking a little bit about that.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination?
Of course.
It's a big shift by President Trump.
Shift. This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
So Jackie's back to bring us all the sport.
She is indeed.
One very excited and quite bouncy, Melbourne Melbourne.
I was delighted. I woke up to the great news. Forest 1-0 up in the first leg.
Forest beat Villa last night 1-0 up. Unai Emery the Villa manager absolutely furious, though, with VAR. He really thinks that Elliot Anderson should have been sent off for a studs-up tackle last night on Ollie Watkins, but he wasn't. And I think it's been quite a lot of VAR controversy this week in Europe, where, you know, it is meant to be used for a clear and obvious error, and actually it's just being used as a double-check all the time, with referees and sort of deferring to VAR, which has caused a lot of annoyance amongst a lot of managers. The situation is they will go to Villa Park, Forest, next week for the reverse fixture. They do not have a good record at Villa Park. In fact, they hardly ever win there.
Great.
So I think Villa will think, OK, we're 1-0 down, but we'll sort it out back at our place. And that's possibly what a lot of
So enjoy the week.
What's all this confidence that they're going to turn around?
Great. It was a great night as well at Crystal Palace. Yeah. But we can have a little quick look at the action last night for you. Well, the game full of controversy in the first half. Here's the foul on striker Ollie Watkins by the Forest midfielder Elliot Anderson, and it went unpunished. And you can make your own decision about that. Great save from the Villa keeper as well. I hate it when we never show saves, but they are such a big part, certainly this season. Emi Martinez, brilliant reaction save to deny Forest Igor Jesus, clawing the ball off the line to stop them taking an early lead. And then came the only goal of the game. It was from the penalty spot after Luca Dean handles inside the area, and only he will know why he did that. It gave Chris Wood the chance to score a perfect spot kick, a thumping spot kick for his second goal in as many matches. He just back from injury, of course. The second leg at Villa Park is next Thursday. It was a really good night for Crystal Palace. They've got 1 foot in the Conference League final after a 3-1 win against Shakhtar Donetsk. Ismail Assar scored the fastest goal in the competition's history after just 21 seconds. The Ukrainians equalised early in the second half before further goals from Daichi Kamada and Jürgen Strand-Larsen. So Palace have a 2-goal cushion to take back to Selhurst Park next week. And I'm wondering if they win that competition, whether that will be enough for Oliver Glasson to change his mind and stay.
Maybe.
Maybe not. So Live Golf yesterday, a press release was put out saying that, you know, having sunk £3.8 million or thereabouts over 4 years, and completely disrupting golf, the Saudis have decided that they are no longer going to sink money into this, you know, big golf ship that just seems to hemorrhage money every month. They put out a press release. I actually spoke to them yesterday to see if there will be any Saudi involvement. It seems not. They've appointed a new board at Live Golf. They will have to go out and find new investors. And they've painted a rosy picture, but the point is, I don't think a lot of people really cared about it. People didn't really... You know, I don't even know where you can really watch it. There were a lot of golfers you didn't know who they were, but there were really big-name golfers who defected. And they all said, oh, it's a new innovation, bringing golf to different people. Rubbish. It was always about the money. John Rahm is reportedly to have gone to Live Golf for $300 million, plus the money that he won, which was over $64 million. What does he do now? You know, what does Bryson DeChambeau do now? There was a sort of one-time sweet deal for players to return to the US Tour, and people like Brooks Koepka took it and jumped through the hoops that they needed to jump through. John Rahm has sort of fallen out with the European Tour because he doesn't want to pay their fines. Will they be welcome back? You know, it's just a big question. Have they burnt their bridges? Possibly. And interestingly, Donald Trump was asked about, you know, he's such a golf fan, and actually a lot of his golf courses have been hosting the Live Golf events.
Oh, have they?
Yes, they have. But even he, I think, admits that actually it would be good to have all the big names back playing on the US PGA Tour. This was last night. Have a listen.
The Tour wants to have the best player. You can't have the best player that they're boycotting. Now, they may do something, you know, a little bit, but they'll all be back on tour and it'll be great.
It'll be great.
It will be great. I mean, I'm just looking at the fines or the forfeits. I mean, it's loads and loads of money. If they want to come back to the PGA...
There's millions.
Millions and millions and millions. They've got to give up.
It's millions. But some of the players have thought, do you know what, it's worth it, I'll play it, you know. And of course, there were players who really stood their ground and said, this is ridiculous. Well, how could you leave a tour with such great hiry just for money, the PGA Tour and the European Tour, which is now called...
Will the Live players just hang on in there hoping that other investors are found?
Well, it's going to be difficult. I mean, I had a look at the press release. They were kind of painting it with a rosy picture, saying, you know, this tour makes money, but the fact is it loses about 75 million or thereabouts per month. And the Saudi, you know, even the Saudis, with their bottomless pit of money, have said we can't just keep pumping money into something that's hemorrhaging so much.
And Jackie, the argument was when they launched it, it was sports washing to kind of make the kingdom look like a place where people could go. They've kind of achieved that, haven't they? The World Cup come and got all the boxing, and they don't need to keep doing that.
Well, they would argue not. They would say, we're doing this for us. We want to create an alternative economy that's outside of oil, you know, and we're doing this for our people so they can watch really good sport. But, I mean, the fact is, whatever it did, this, I don't think, took off the way they thought it would. They changed the number of holes. It was one round less. They made it into a team competition and it didn't really catch on. They thought they could sell those team franchises. There were so many things that were supposed to happen that didn't really happen, and they quite recently switched back to, you know, four rounds. It's so tricky. Funnily enough, Gianni Infantino, who's Donald Trump's great friend at FIFA, was also speaking at the FIFA Congress yesterday, confirming that Iran would be playing at the World Cup. We have to unite, he said, and they would play their matches in the USA. So I think Iran had asked to play their matches in Mexico, and it was confirmed by Gianni Infantino they would, in fact, be playing their matches in the USA. So
not swapping with Italy, no.
No. And Luke Littler won last night. We haven't got time to show it, but we will next hour. Luke Littler winning another night of Premier League darts, which means he's gone to the top of the standings. Kind of knew that was going to happen.
It's the best out there. All right, Jackie, thank you for that.
See you in a bit.
See you again next hour.
Fantastic stuff. I don't know if we've got much time to talk about bird watching.
We'll do that next hour.
We'll do it in the next hour.
Yeah.
Big hit amongst Gen Z, not to give the game away or anything. But anyway, stay with us. We've got all the top stories coming up after the break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Let's have a look.
45-year-old Essa Suleiman is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in North London.
The terror threat level raised to severe, and the public are being urged to be vigilant but not alarmed.
Sky News uses exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in southern Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
New footage of the White House dinner shooter released, showing him scoping out the venue and rushing through security.
We're also going to take a look at the new raft of rights for renters that comes into force today and why some landlords say the new rules go too far.
And Jackie will join us later with the sport as a Chris Woods penalty puts Forest in the driving seat in the first leg of the Europa League semi-final against Villa. Good morning, thank you for being with us. Now, in just the past hour, a major development in our top story. A 45-year-old man has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after the stabbing of 2 men in North London.
Well, Amelia Harper, who's in Golders Green, has this update.
This is someone who is a British national born in Somalia, and he's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later today. And just to remind our viewers of what happened here a few days ago, 2 Jewish men were stabbed in an attack. Police were called at around 11:15 a.m. The first victim is 34-year-old Shloime Rand, who has now been released from hospital. The second victim, 76-year-old Moshe Shine. And in the wake of what has happened yesterday, the UK's terror threat level was raised to severe. Now, this means that a terror attack is highly likely within the next 6 months. And this was a decision that was made by a group called the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre. They sit within MI5, but they are independent of the government, and they are a group which assesses the terror threat level here in the UK, and they have said that this decision was made not just because of the attack that happened here in Golders Green, but because of what they're saying is a rising terror risk in the UK, and that's been seen over the last, however many weeks and months, driven by Islamist and extreme right-wing terror threats from individuals and groups based within the UK. And the last time that the threat level was raised to this level was back in November 2021 in the wake of 2 incidents which happened in very close succession. The first one being an attack, a bombing at a women's hospital in Liverpool, and the second one being an attack on the MP Sir David Amess, who was murdered in his constituency surgery. This attack has obviously prompted incredible stress for the Jewish community, and this is something that has been acknowledged by the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. In an address at Downing Street, he said that the Jewish community were scared, and he has urged the public to, in his words, open their eyes to Jewish pain. The government has said it has pledged an additional £25 million to help protect the Jewish community in the UK, and that is money that will go towards protection outside of schools, outside of synagogues, those types of things. And actually yesterday as well, the Prime Minister was heckled by some protesters when he visited the scene. One of the chants was Keir Starmer, Jew harmer. We are due to hear from the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, later on Sky News. But that news just in, that Essa Suleiman has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder.
Well, the national terror threat level has been raised to severe, and the public are being urged to be vigilant but not alarmed. Well, earlier I spoke to the Justice Minister, Alex Davies-Jones, about the strength of feeling and concern in the Jewish community.
The time for thoughts and prayers is over, and this doesn't just need a response, this needs a fundamental solution. And I want to reiterate to the Jewish community that the government is listening, and we are taking that action across society to root out anti-Semitism, because it has no place in our country.
Well, yes, and the Prime Minister talked about lots of steps he wants to take. So essentially, is that an admission that you haven't done enough to tackle anti-Semitism in this country?
I think, yes, it is. We all need to do more to tackle anti-Semitism, given the rising levels that it is occurring here. It's totally unacceptable. And we all have a duty on all of us to look at what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're behaving, in terms of how this is making certain communities and individuals feel in our country.
Yeah, and look, that point put to where not enough had been done to deal with anti-Semitism, accepted there by the government.
Yeah, exactly. As they list steps that they're going to take, the question is whether those steps go far enough. We'll have to see.
Now, we've also spoken to the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, that is Jonathan Hall. He gave us his view on the impact that pro-Palestine protests have been having on the rise in extremism.
All of these marches have had in them expressions of hatred, and I think the Prime Minister was right today to say, yeah, it may not be every person who's carrying something saying globalise the intifada, but the people who are standing next to them are not exactly saying stop it. So I think that a moratorium on pro-Palestine marches is the right thing to do, because otherwise there is a risk that some new individual will look at what people are saying publicly and getting away with saying publicly, and they'll go, well, I know what, I've got to do something about those people. I've got to do something about those Jews and those Zionists and those Israelis. I've got to take my own personal steps.
Well, we also asked the Justice Minister about those comments.
I would say that the right to protest is a fundamental one in our country, and it is one that I am proud that we have, and one that I will fiercely defend and protect. But ultimately, we have seen these marches be hijacked by certain individuals who are seeking to cause and sow division and hatred in our country. And I would say to anyone that is seeking to march at the moment to please reflect on what is happening in our country, how certain communities and individuals are feeling. And as I've said, it is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that we do better, that we are good citizens, and that we seek to prevent any cause of hatred, alarm, distress or intimidation at this time or whenever.
But you're not looking to ban the marches?
We will take action if we need to, and the Home Secretary did ban a march just last month to prevent that dangerous alarm, intimidation and threat that I've talked about.
And just to let you know that the head of the Metropolitan Police, the Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, is going to be on the programme in just a few minutes' time, so do stay with us for that.
Yeah, looking forward to that conversation. Plenty to ask Sir Mark this morning. Now, Sky News has used exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in the south of Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
Well, the equivalent of 50,000 homes have been razed over weeks of bombardment, wiping out entire villages. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford has this report.
This isn't Gaza, this is Lebanon, and just some of the dozens of villages in the south that have been virtually wiped out by Israel in a matter of weeks. All done, according to Israel, to eradicate Hezbollah from the border area. Most of the IDF activity has been concentrated between the Lebanese-Israel border and what Israel is calling a forward defense line.
We will clean Hezbollah and its supporters from southern Lebanon with security control of the IDF over the entire Litani area.
The Israeli military has claimed it's targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. But what we're seeing on the ground looks like a much broader strategy to permanently clear this area of Lebanon. And there's a growing body of visual evidence.
It is a kind of national ethnic cleansing, what is happening there.
The ceasefire is in name only. Both sides deny it, both sides accuse the other of breaching it. And the Lebanese army cites Israeli bombing on a daily basis. Still, the demolitions go on apace, and Hezbollah is continuing its attacks. As part of this investigation, we worked with the independent investigative outlet Centre for Information Resilience. The centre found at least 29 villages have suffered extensive damage since the 2nd of March. That was the day Hezbollah fired 6 rockets on Israel in support of Tehran. In reality, most of these villages and all the homes in them have been razed. Most sit roughly 10 kilometres inside Lebanese territory, a swathe of land which Israel is calling its security zone and has marked out with a yellow line. To assess the scale of destruction from a bird's eye view, we turned to data scientists at the University of Oregon. By analysing satellite imagery, they found at least 2,154 buildings across Lebanon were destroyed in Israeli attacks between the 28th of February and the 13th of April. Lebanese officials say that amounts to more than 50,000 housing units. Sky News's own analysis found that nearly half of that damage is outside the self-declared Israeli security zone. We verified footage circulating online from villages inside the Israeli so-called buffer zone that show not only airstrikes, but massive controlled demolitions, wiping out entire neighbourhoods, including homes, roads and schools. Controlled demolitions have very different characteristics to airstrikes. Weapons analysts told us a cable is often seen lighting up right before the explosion. The impact is also very distinct in terms of scale and projection of the blast, as well as the way the buildings collapse. The IDF told us it takes all feasible measures to protect civilians. They replied to our queries about the high number of civilian deaths and the widespread destruction of civilian buildings by saying it issued advanced warnings of strikes. And they insist it only destroys military objectives, although it rarely provides evidence to support these claims. Without detailing the absolute military necessity for destroying the homes, the schools and mosques which are being levelled, there could be further violations of international law. The IDF insists its troops are only in Lebanon right now to protect Israeli citizens from Hezbollah and will remain there until the group is destroyed. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
Now, the national terror threat level has been raised from substantial to severe for the first time since 2021 after that attack in Golders Green on Wednesday.
Well, we can now speak to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, who's here in the studio with us. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. And I want to talk about the terror threat in just a moment. But first of all, the police have announced charges this morning relating to the Golders Green stabbings. What can you tell us about them?
So he's been charged with relation to two incidents, one earlier in the day where he's been charged with an attempted murder, and then the Golders Green stabbings, 2 charges of attempted murder and one to do with the knife he was carrying. So obviously we can't talk in detail now about that because that'll work its way through the courts. I was at the scene sort of a couple of hours after the incident on Wednesday afternoon, and I visited the officers back at the police station who'd been so extraordinarily brave in what they did, confronting somebody who they believed was a terrorist, and they were concerned he may have explosive device on him, and what they did as unarmed officers was absolutely extraordinary.
And we may talk a little bit more about that later on, but let's turn to the terror threat level, which was last night raised to severe from substantial, the first time since 2021. Can you tell us whether that threat level was raised because of specific intelligence about a planned attack?
So no, this is more about a rising tide. So what we've seen is the rising amount of caseload that the joint teams that sort of are coordinated from London across the country of policing and MI5, the caseload they're working on together, about 3/4 of the caseload is Islamist-related terrorism, groups like ISIS, about a quarter of it is extreme right, there's a few other marginal bits around the edges. That's all been slowly rising, that caseload, and it's that context as well as the pressures brought by global events and how that agitates some of these issues that's led the independent body that looks at these things to tip the threshold into severe. Public shouldn't immediately change their behaviours, but please be a bit more alert. Don't hesitate. If there's something you see or someone you're worried about, there's that barrier. Oh, should I trouble the police? Please do trouble the police. Please step forward, but be alert, but don't be alarmed.
Should it change police behaviour? Does it put more pressure on police to have a higher threat level?
So we've been working sort of in many ways at this level in respect of Jewish communities for some time. We've had in North West London extra resources on the streets for several weeks as we've been going through this challenging period. Had positive feedback from Jewish leaders about how that's felt. My challenge now is sustaining that for the years ahead, because what we're dealing with are the symptoms of a long-term rising tide of anti-Semitism. But the symptoms of violence that we need to tackle and protect those communities from requires the strength on the streets, and it's difficult to do that in a shrinking organisation. On Wednesday night, on the back of these incidents, we put an immediate proposal into government that we put together. The Mayor's very supportive of it as well. And we're still in urgent conversations about funding that. We think it's going to take the best part of 300 extra officers to strengthen the neighbourhood policing in those areas, really visible and local and connected to communities, supported by specialists like firearms officers.
You talk about 300 extra officers. The Prime Minister has talked about an extra £25 million to help protect areas. Is that not enough? Is that what you're saying?
That's got, I think, multiple purposes there. Some of that's for some of the community initiatives, some of that's for policing. Part of it's a down payment, so to speak, on what we're doing. But to be able to build that team, I need very quickly sort of a long-term confidence that I can build the capacity to do that. And we've got good, healthy conversations with the government, but I'm going to need an answer very quickly. Healthy conversations. Give us a rough idea of how much that would cost the government, what you're asking. I don't want to get into sort of an online, sort of on TV sort of negotiation, but it's pretty urgent we get that sorted.
Significantly more than the 25 million that's already been offered.
And that's got several purposes behind it, yes, and it is more.
But it's more than that. Let's come back to the point that you made at the beginning of our conversation. Yes. Good morning to you, Commissioner. Good morning. About the criticism that your officers have faced from some quarters for the way that the arrest was carried out. The video shows the officers kicking this individual in the head. Is that appropriate force to use at that point?
It's rare and unusual, but if you're confronting somebody who you believe is a terrorist, he's on the floor after you've tasered him, but he's not letting go of the knife. On a very hot day, he's wearing a puffer jacket. He's huddled up, and you're thinking, and he's got a rucksack on, and you're thinking, I think he might have explosives the way he's behaving. That is an extreme situation, and that requires extreme force. And so in that situation, the sort of things they did, I can understand in the heat of the moment and in that fear and that determination to try and neutralise the threat they perceive. That's a reasonable thing for them to do.
You're OK with it?
In most situations, it wouldn't be reasonable, but in that situation, it was reasonable. And I think what I've been pleased to see is the amount of support online from members of the public for the officers.
You're obviously coming for criticism from some quarters, or the officers have from some political quarters, and you've responded to that in quite extraordinary with an open letter to a political leader. Again, is that appropriate for you as the Commissioner to be speaking to a political leader like that about their words?
I'm not getting involved in politics. I'm dealing with operations. I need my officers to have confidence to tackle the most difficult and dangerous individuals. Of course, there's always going to be sort of eccentricity and nonsense online. But if an eminent person steps into operational policing and sort of criticises officers in a way that can undermine their confidence to act, I need to support that. And I'm grateful for all the support members of the public have offered on the back of the letter I published yesterday.
Heard that, but you recognise it could be seen by some as thin end of the wedge because you, Commissioner, or not, if not you, your successor, could feel the need to get involved more in sort of commenting on the things that politicians say.
That'd be wrong. So this is about an operational matter. He has stepped into operational policing with his criticism and his inaccuracies, and I need to put that straight.
What do you want him to say now? Because your letter, I don't think, has been responded to.
That's a matter for him.
The stabbings at Golders Green are the sixth anti-Semitic attack in the last few weeks. You visited the area earlier in the week. You were heckled by residents there who were shouting shame on you. Do you understand the anger and fear in the community? And what responsibility do you think the police should take for that? Because the police's job is to keep people safe, isn't it?
So there've just been two Jewish men chased down and stabbed for what they are, for what they believe. That is awful to happen anywhere. Of course, people are going to be upset. I completely understand that. What we're dealing with are the symptoms, the violence that that Jewish communities are seeing, the fear that they're feeling. That's a symptom of a rising tide of anti-Semitism that's been building over many, many years. The Prime Minister's spoken about that, and that's the issues around extremism and community cohesion are things for governments and others to deal with. We're seeing those symptoms of that disease, and we're doing everything we can to protect communities. And we put more resources on the streets. We spoke a moment ago about what more that's going to take to help us sustain that. We'll do everything we can do to protect them, but we also need, I think, everyone to sort of think about what can we all do to show support for British citizens, to show that regardless of your sort of, I don't know, faith or race, that you all deserve equal respect.
You talk about the rise in anti-Semitism.
Yes.
The independent reviewer of terrorism, Jonathan Hall, has talked about the role that pro-Palestine marches might be playing in stoking some feelings of anti-Semitism. He's called for a moratorium on those marches. Would you like to see that?
So, a complete moratorium on protest would take emergency legislation because there's no power at the moment to stop a protest happening. In extremis, we can contain and condition protests so that they're only a static event, but you can't get rid of them completely. I am concerned about the effect they have. I think we should recognise some of these big events are quite a broad coalition. You've got people who are just there from a sort of pacifist anti-war perspective through to people with very strong opinions, and we have made arrests on the margins of those, and we have sometimes had sort of pretty sort of difficult conversations with Crown Prosecution Service where we have different views about what can be prosecuted, but that's their decision in the end. I think the inadequacy of the law has been recognised by the Home Secretary. She's commissioned Lord Ken MacDonald to do a review on protest and hate crime law, and I think he's reporting soon.
And you've got some tougher laws as well that you can use in terms of face covering and some of the chats that you can
use those,
use those now. On these specific protests that are going to be held on the 16th of May, there's a Nakba Day protest. Also, Stephen Yatzy Lennon goes by the name Tommy Robinson, is holding a Unite the Right rally.
Unite the Kingdom.
Unite the Kingdom, right. That protest is allowed to march. The reporting seems to suggest that the Nakba Day one is not allowed to march. Can you just clear up exactly what each protest is allowed to do?
We haven't finalised the conditions yet. We're still working our way through that. I'm troubled by what could be two massive events. They're both selected the same day. That could easily be taking a couple of thousand police officers more based on our current plans. I'd much rather those thousands of officers were in communities fighting crime and protecting them from other risks. But we'll have to deal with this, and I think it's even more contentious in this context.
Yeah, I mean, you'll likely be bringing other officers from other forces. Have you already requested that at this point? Because I think it's football on that day as well.
And it's the FA Cup final as well.
The FA Cup final.
And there'll be pro- and anti-Iranian regime protest in London. It's sort of the logistics of this and people exercising their rights and us stopping those groups clashing. It feels like three-dimensional chess. It's really tough.
I mean, you've talked about public safety over business-as-usual policing when looking at these sort of things, but where does sort of the right to protest fit into that equation that you've kind of worked out?
So all of our decisions, we have to take account of the Human Rights Act. That's all part of what we have to do. So if Parliament wants to change the balance of our considerations, that's a matter for them in the law, but we take account of that. So I think that's why Parliament's decided that everybody has a right to protest, and that can't be banned. It can only be constrained or restricted by policing.
And you haven't decided how you're going to constrain those protests?
No, so we've been looking at it. We've got some thinking at the moment, but that's being reviewed on the basis of the rising threat level and what we're seeing at the moment.
We ought to let you go. We've taken up a lot of your time. We've got a lot of people to talk to. But just finally, I wanted you to sum up how you see the level of anti-Semitism in this country. How dangerous is it to be Jewish in this country at the moment?
I think the level of anti-Semitism is really tragic. If you look at what's going on in communities, I've seen some data recently suggesting about a quarter of Britons hold anti-Semitic attitudes in terms of belief in tropes like sort of global Jewish power domination or wealth or a lack of loyalty to Britain. That is a toxic disease which is affecting all these issues. Downstream of that, we're dealing with the symptoms of it, and we'll do everything we can do to protect Jewish communities because everybody in Britain deserves the right to be who they are and feel safe and confident going about in their faith and their race without feeling of criticism or challenge.
I mean, really simply, and final question then, Commissioner, Jewish people safe in London today?
You can never be binary about something like that in any big city, but we're going to do everything we possibly can do to keep them safe. The sort of investment and resources that we've temporarily put in North West London, we're going to do everything we can do to secure that for the long term with government.
If I may, there may have been a time when you would have said, yes, of course we're going to keep that community safe, and the fact that you can't say that unequivocally this morning tells us something, doesn't it?
The world is difficult and challenging, and I don't want to make a trivial, glib comment that's unrealistic. But what I can do is say we will do everything possible to keep those communities safe. And we can see the horrible, horrible symptoms of hate crime and, in extreme cases, the sort of attacks we've seen in recent weeks, the horrible, horrible symptoms of anti-Semitism that Jewish communities are facing. We'll do everything we can to stand with them and protect them.
So Mark, really, we appreciate your time.
Thank you both
so
very much.
Thanks for your time, Commissioner. Thank you for being with us. All right, we'll talk about that one a little bit later on, I think. But let's move on to the situation in the US, where the Trump administration is claiming the US-Iran ceasefire, which began in early April, has been terminated as hostilities with Iran have ended, they argue.
Yeah, they're talking about the ceasefire, of course. President Trump faced the deadline of today to end the war, or else be forced to make the case to Congress for extending it. But the conflict does look set to continue regardless, with the American blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, of course, still in place.
Now, newly released footage has been released showing just how quickly the gunman in that White House Correspondents' Dinner attack was able to get through security. Now, of course, Donald Trump was in attendance in that ballroom at the Washington Hilton.
So let's see the video. It shows the man, there he goes, dashing through the security checkpoint in a matter of seconds, giving officers only moments to draw their weapons. This is 31-year-old Cole Allen, who's facing charges of attempting to assassinate President Trump at the press gala. He's yet to enter a plea.
No, he's not, and he's due in court again on the 11th of May to face those charges. 3 charges, one of attempting to murder the president, one of taking a weapon across state lines, and one of discharging that weapon as well. Since we've got a moment, I think it's probably worth reflecting on what we heard from the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, there, who I thought tried to answer the questions as much as he could with the restrictions that are in place, obviously, because there are charges. But what I took from what I heard from the Commissioner was just a sense that despite his best efforts, despite having some of the resources, wants more resources, he can't guarantee that people are going to be kept safe because of, as he kept pointing out, the rising tide of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, he said he didn't want to make any glib promises, but he's talking about wanting 300 extra officers, says they're having conversations with the Home Office about that. We'll wait and see where that goes.
We will. We've got those protests coming up on the 16th of May, and of course, as he said, they're going to have to make a decision pretty swiftly as to how those events will be policed. Now, coming up, we're going to speak to Matteo Del Masso, who is the winner of the 18th Donatella Flick London Symphony Orchestra conducting competition.
That's a mouthful.
It really is. See you soon.
After the break.
Now, the Italian conductor Matteo Del Masso has been named the winner of one of the most prestigious conducting competitions in the world. It's called the Donatella Click LSO conducting competition. I tried to avoid that because it was a lot to say.
I think it's Donatella Flick as well, I think. Anyway, his winning performance will be showcased in the final episode of the Sky Arts series Making a Maestro, which airs next week. So let's take a quick look at their trailer.
Antonio Pappano and the London Symphony Orchestra are searching for their next conductor.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
Hundreds apply, but only one can win Europe's premier conducting competition.
To win this competition would be life-changing.
So I hope I'm not causing you too many anxious moments.
We're in show business.
A life-changing moment hangs at the tip of a baton.
And I'm pleased to say Matteo Del Masso joins us now. Good morning to you, Matteo. Thank you very much for being
Good morning.
with us.
Congratulations.
It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Very nice to meet you.
And congratulations to you. Just talk to us about this competition, what it means.
It means a lot, you know, for conductors. For young conductor, it's very difficult to start a career, and you need something, a kind of a booster to be visible. And there is not such a better place to start a career with a concert with the London Symphony Orchestra. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Give us an insight into your work and what makes a good conductor.
Well, the conductor first is a musician, and as a musician, we should be very, very prepared. And then there is another aspect that is less technical, but we work with people, so we should be able to be good leader and to gather all the intention through our idea, which is the idea of the composer. Hopefully.
Look, talk to us about the process of conducting an orchestra. For those that maybe aren't very versed with it, or those that are trying to be a bit rude, they'll just see you standing at the front, waving your hands and waving the stick, and they're like, well, everyone's got the music in front of them, so surely they can follow along. Talk to us about what it is you guys do to make sure that what we hear when the orchestra is playing is what you want it to be, and not, as you say, what the composer thought it should be.
First of all, we should be very, very prepared. Is it true what people think, that we just wave our hands and something happens magically, just because we are not playing? But we should be so prepared and so convinced of our idea and of the idea of the composer that we should allow people, to musicians, to play following our gesture. And so preparation is really a basic stuff for conducting. And then there is also the magic moment of the concert when with our body we express the intention of the composer. So it's kind of preparation and inspiration.
And also, I mean, how difficult is it for young conductors at the start of their career? This competition it's about bridging that gap, isn't it, between kind of finishing training and then actually being let loose on big orchestras. I mean, how important is it to have this sort of help in that gap?
It's very important. As a conductor, we cannot practice with our instrument. We don't have a violin or a clarinet or a trumpet to play 8 hours a day, and we cannot practice with the orchestra because orchestra is not an instrument. It's not made of wood or metal. It's made by people. So it's very difficult. And having the opportunity to be on the podium in front of musicians and make music at every stage, from amateur choir to student orchestra to the London Symphony Orchestra, is really precious for every conductor. So we should take advantage of every moment to make music with people.
Matteo, take us into standing in front of the orchestra. I wonder, is there a particular section of the orchestra that you have more trouble with than another one, between the percussion? Which one do you have to make sure you keep a close eye on and make sure that they're keeping to your time?
Well, in general, as a conductor, you should be the same with everyone, but you have usually a close friend, a very important friend that sometimes is more important than the conductor itself, which is the leader, the first violin, which is the real connection between me and the orchestra. So having this person very close and be on the same direction with this person is very important to bring all the orchestra that sometimes can be very big, like 100 musicians, to the same direction. So
that's so interesting. So when you do get to conduct the London Symphony Orchestra, will you have made that connection with the first violin earlier, before you get to practice? Do you go out, take them out for coffee, take them out for a drink? I mean, is it a personal connection as well as a professional one?
No, usually, yes, it's personal, but maybe the first time you meet an orchestra, you don't go out for coffee. You just stand, shake hands, and try to make music. And then maybe if the connection is good, you can, in a break, speak and talk about more personally. But it's good to start in a professional way.
And Matteo, obviously you are great at this and a maestro. But you're suggesting there that sometimes maybe you're standing there, the orchestra doesn't actually want to do what you want to do. Have you had that? Has you had that kind of tension with some of the musicians you're faced with?
It can happen, especially in some countries where orchestras, the conductor is seen not as someone to collaborate with, but as the authority. I'm talking about the country of south of Europe, where I am from, not the one I'm working with. I'm working in Teatro Petruzzelli at the moment for opera production in Bari, which is an amazing place. But the orchestra is a reflection of society. So sometimes you go to a country where the orchestra is made by people who all want to make music, and sometimes countries where they still play amazing, but the hierarchy is more clear. So it really depends. We should be flexible as conductor. It is the beauty of our job.
Absolutely. Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And we're looking forward to the series as well, to see the competition on our screens as well. Matteo Damaso, so good to talk to you this morning, and congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So don't necessarily go out for a coffee.
No.
With the orchestra.
Make friends with first violin.
Make friends through music.
Absolutely.
Makes
we should.
total sense. Now then, the King has wrapped up his 4-day visit to the US with a mission to mend what's become a strained relationship across the Atlantic.
Yeah, the tour has continued, though, for the King and Queen. They're in Bermuda, marking the first visit to a British overseas territory. The visit to the US was received warmly by President Trump, though, who even lifted the tariff on Scotch whisky, which Buckingham Palace said that they would, of course, toast with a wee dram. Our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, reports.
So your journey is almost over.
Warm words, a fond farewell, and for the President, certainly one special relationship he cherishes. Does the King feel the same way? We'll never know, but he's charmed the White House at a time of tension between Britain and the US. At Arlington Cemetery, a moment to remember the fallen from the Civil War to more modern conflict. And then to Virginia's aptly named Front Royal. Remarkably, this town's the first time the couple have met the crowds. 250 years ago, they probably wouldn't have welcomed the King like this. But here now, a block party celebrating America's birthday. So you write to the Queen?
Yes, probably a number of people do. And she's very kind to write back. And I'm so terribly fond of her, really, and so fond of the King. I don't know why I say really, it's not the least bit surprising. They spend so much time doing things that really matter.
I think they both exemplify so much civility that you don't see in all phases of government right now.
If the King and Queen were wondering what Americans made of them, here at least there's little doubt. One thing's clear, this state visit has been great PR for the palace, a personal win for the King after so much negativity around Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The King's speeches were well received and widely praised. He delivered the diplomatic message. But the bigger question, politically, will this trip make any difference? So it's been a busy 4 days, so much to see, but also so much to carefully say in what's been his most significant state visit to date. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Virginia.
Well, it seems to have been well received by President Trump in Bermuda. It's not too bad on the way home to have a little stopover like that for the King. And all the talk in the lead up to this state visit, I was a little bit nervous that something more embarrassing would happen for the King. Of course, he's consummate diplomat and professional. He knows exactly how to handle these situations, and they do seem to kind of get on. There were a few awkward moments. Didn't President Trump say that his mum
had a soft spot for him? Yeah, he did. But he definitely, I mean, President Trump has a soft spot for all the royal family, 100%. Doesn't he? So he obviously delighted to have King Charles visit. Mark Stone picked up the phone to Donald Trump. He has a habit of picking up and answering, doesn't he, journalists.
Must have saved the number now.
And he asked him whether or not it had improved relations with Keir Starmer, and he said, I don't know about that.
After a long pause, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Not sure. All right, let's take a look at the weather. As you told us earlier, I think it's going to be nice and sunny.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
And as promised, there's going to be more warm sunshine today, but there'll be some showers around too, and some of them will be thundery. Then it's going to turn cooler and more unsettled for, of course, the bank holiday weekend. Well, the east of the country will see the best of the morning sun. Further west, there'll be more cloud around. There'll be some showers across Western Britain, with more developing over parts of Ireland by lunchtime. After the recent blustery weather, winds are going to be much lighter, which will make it feel very warm, especially in the sunshine. Temperatures could reach 27 degrees Celsius in the south.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Another opportunity for Kamali to get all giddy, because we've got the sport coming up in a moment, and his team did rather well last night.
They did. They beat Villa by a goal to nil at the City ground to give them the upper hand in the first leg of the Europa League semi-final. We'll have that and the rest of the day's sport with Jackie next.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry. Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military, and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination? Of course. It's a big shift by President Trump.
Shift. This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
All right, thanks for staying with us. Jackie has joined us for a look at some of the sport and one of the goals, at least, I'll be looking at very closely from last night.
It was a really good night in Europe last night, wasn't it? And the fact, you've got two English clubs from the Premier League playing each other in the semi-finals of European competition is pretty special.
Yeah, it's great.
It doesn't happen very often. So Forest at home to Aston Villa. Unai Emery, the Villa manager, was pretty furious after that match. He was furious with VAR. Usually our managers are annoyed that VAR has been used at all. He was annoyed that they didn't get a decision right because Elliot Anderson, he thought, should have been sent off for a tackle last night. We'll have a look at it in a minute, but not quite yet. What's interesting about this tie is it's quite well balanced. So Forest are leading 1-0, but they have to go to Villa Park where they don't really tend to get anything. And I think Aston Villa will think, it's fine. 1-0 is fine. We can go to our place and we can finish this job off. And the fact that Unai Emery has won this competition 4 times.
Keep telling me that.
He is so good.
You keep telling me that. We'll see what happens this year.
Well, it's true. I mean, he is known as the manager. He is Mr.
I've heard that. It's fine.
Mr. Europa League. Also, the other thing is Forest still have to secure their survival in the Premier League. So they're fighting on 2 fronts when really, their sole focus, perhaps they would like to be, we need to survive in the Premier League. But they're so good at the moment. Yeah. Their unbeaten run is 9 matches. They're looking pretty safe.
There's a bit of upset about when they play next as well. I think they're playing Monday rather than Sunday.
Yes,
which is upset.
playing.
I think it's the only time European club has played on a Monday in this competition, and then they're playing on Thursday as well, which is a very short turnaround.
It's a very short turnaround. But they will have had a big long rest before they play on the upside. Let's take a quick look at the action from last night. So this is what got Unai Emery hot under the collar. This is the foul on striker Ollie Watkins by Forest midfielder Elliot Anderson that went unpunished. You can make your own decision about that. Studs up. Perhaps he was lucky. Then have a look at this amazing save. Villa keeper Emi Martinez making a brilliant reaction save to deny Forest's Igor Jesus, clawing the ball off the line to prevent them taking an early lead. And that could be the moment that Villa really have to thank him for. Chris Wood scored the only goal of the game then. It was from the penalty spot after Luca Dean handled inside the area. Goodness knows why he put his hand up, but he did. Second leg is at Villa Park next Thursday, as Kamali said. And it was a great night for Crystal Palace in the Conference League. They've got 1 foot in that final after a 3-1 win against Shakhtar Donetsk. Ismail Assar scored the fastest goal in the competition's history after just 21 seconds. So let's talk golf yesterday, because the other big story was that Live Golf, the great disruptor of golf 4 years ago, put out a press release saying that the Saudi money is no longer going to be there after this season. Worst kept secret in golf, but it was there in black and white yesterday that they've got a new board, they've got 2 new directors whose job it will be now to try and find extra funding from somewhere to continue the tour. And honestly, it's going to be very difficult because this tour has been hemorrhaging money. Liv have sunk something like £3.8 billion into it in 4 years. It's said to be losing around £75 million year on year. So to get investors to literally pump money into a sort of hole in the ground it's going to be quite difficult, I think. And I think it's interesting because they really did go in and disrupt golf. You know, players defected, really big name players defected for an awful lot of cash. It broke up not only golf, but it also, broke up friendships on the tour. Can you remember how, some players, Rory McIlroy, so against it. His best friend, John Ram, so against it. And then all of a sudden, for $300 million, he switches to Live Golf and said it was about new opportunities and breaking new ground and really never saying what it really was, which was the money. Bryson DeChambeau, another one. Yep. What happens to these players now? You're kind of left in limbo. If they cannot find any funding by, August, that's it done. a lot of players that you perhaps don't know who've made a great living out of live golf. Good luck to them. But there's really big name players that the tours will perhaps want back, but maybe not.
Will they be welcome? That's my question. Will they be welcome back to the tour?
I think it depends how big they are, doesn't it? I mean, John Ram could be on the European tour, but refuses to pay the fine, so he is in a bit of a dispute with them. Brooks Koepka, for example, was on the live tour. He broke away, and then there was this one-time offer from the US tour that said, you guys can come back, but you've got to do X, Y, and Z. He did. He took the medicine, and he has gone back on that tour. But it was... It's such a big thing in golf, this whole rift, that even Donald Trump was asked about it last night. I mean, given, what is going on in the world, he was asked about golf and what it would be if maybe the American players could return, the star players could return to the US PGA Tour. And this is what he said.
The tour wants to have the best player. You can't have the best player that they're boycotting. Now, they may do something, a little bit, but they'll all be back on tour and it'll be great.
And actually, a lot of his golf courses hosted the live golf events.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a real kind of live golf fan, I think.
I guess the other thing as well is that all the big names do pull out of live golf and try and come back.
Yeah.
What does that mean for investors? I mean, are they likely to?
Well, no. This is the big thing. Can someone like Bryson DeChambeau, his contract is up at the end of this season, so. I read reports that he is asking for a renewal of his contract on the Live Golf Tour of $400 million, which, given that even the Saudis, with their sort of bottomless, seemingly, pit of money, are no longer willing to pump money into this project, he's not going to get. So,
well, do they all have contracts as well? So are they live in breach of contract now that they're killing off?
If it doesn't exist, of course, you can't play it, can you? So, I mean, I should think that someone like John Ram and Brooks Koepka will end up being back on the main tours, but they'll have to pay big fines. The fines are big, millions. They'll probably have to do things like, you have to play this number of tournaments and we're going to tell you which tournaments you have to play, sort of dictating your life a little bit because it helps us. So stuff like that. But, it's interesting. The fact is, I don't think people really engaged. People didn't want to see golf change and they didn't want to see team golf and they couldn't figure out where to watch it. It was just all of those things. It just never really captured the imagination, the way other changes in sport, like, the Cricket 100, for example, has done, right? I just wanted to mention Gianni Infantino because it was interesting yesterday. It was the big summit, the big FIFA Congress in Canada. And the big question is Iran going to play in the World Cup? And if they do, where will they play their matches? He confirmed yesterday, and Gianni Infantino, of course, great friends of Donald Trump, gave him a Peace Prize, confirmed that Iran would be playing in the World Cup. And they would play their group matches, which are Belgium, Egypt and New Zealand, in the USA. They had asked, could they play them in Mexico? And he said, no, they will play them in the USA.
They actually asked that.
We have to unite. Iran asked if they could play them somewhere else. But, of course, Trump has come out and said, yeah, of course you can come and play, but can't guarantee your safety. And, a lot has been said. And I think until it gets to the point of the World Cup, I don't think we'll really actually know for sure whether Iran will play.
But we know they're not being swapped out with Italy.
They are not being swapped out with Italy, this is true. Massive football weekend this weekend, which is tomorrow. That's come up on me quickly. Massive day in the Championship. It is the last day, really extraordinary day, because we still don't know who's automatically going up with Coventry. Ipswich in the box seat by a point. Will it be them? You've also got Middlesbrough fighting for that place and Millwall. Middlesbrough are playing Wrexham. Wrexham are also fighting for a playoff place. So I'm kind of wondering whether the Hollywood stars, Ryan Reynolds,
they'll be there,
and Rob McElhenney will be there for the final day of the season.
I mean,
I know it can
their
get a bit boring
has been amazing,
that.
hasn't it? I mean, if they did go up, I mean, where did they start?
Consistent promotions year on year, which goes to show, if you pump a lot of money into
you get a Hollywood star on your side.
And you get a Hollywood star on your side. Absolutely brilliant. And we should mention as well last night, Luke Littler, who had quite a slow start to the Premier League season of darts, won again. So he's now gone to the top of the table. Here he is winning the final last night in Aberdeen. 5 wins for him. They break away and do semi-final, beating Luke Humphries, by the way. Oh, yeah. They break away and go and play the last part of this Premier League. I think it's at the O2. And obviously he's qualified for that. So, right bang back on form, just when he needs it.
Good.
And he's a winner again. Which he kind of makes it into most Fridays in our bulletin, doesn't he?
I think he's in every single week, yeah.
He's
Definitely
one
is.
again.
Good old Lily there.
Are you a bird watcher?
I say that and I sort of poo-poo it like it's a very
uncool... You did poo-poo it earlier.
I did poo-poo it. But when I see something extraordinary, I'm like, oh, a woodpecker in my garden, like... He was pecking
That's the one I stopped for in the Sky Gardens the other day.
Pecking the heck out of my shed.
Amazing.
I was like, what are you doing that for? It's pointless. But it was kind of nice to watch.
The red kites along the motorway.
Yeah, you're a big fan, aren't you?
I'm a big fan.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is there is a reason, not just making conversation.
Just chat.
Bird watching is booming amongst Gen Z.
Apparently.
So that's 16
Which
to
one's
29.
Which one's Gen Z?
16 to 29-year-olds, yeah, they're the ones. And they love it because, of course, it's a great hobby. It's peaceful, you get out in nature.
It's free, I think is
Freebie.
But I think it is connecting with nature and getting away
100%.
from all the noise of social media and all the rest of it. Also, it is, I didn't know this, but apparently it's International Dawn Chorus Day on Sunday. This is the day, it's the first Sunday in May. It marks the moment in spring when early morning birdsong reaches a crescendo as bird breeds defend their territories. And they're saying you should go out on Sunday morning. Dawn, I looked it up, it's at, in London, it's at 4:49 a.m. And they say go out about 45 minutes before that to get the best of it. So you and I, that'll
be up. Yeah,
we can so do that. We can definitely
we can
do
go
that.
and have a listen. I've got an app that I use and I can often be found listening out for birdsong that I haven't recognised.
OK, Kamali.
I know. I don't mind admitting it. Stay with us. More in the next hour.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
45-year-old Essa Suleiman is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in North London.
We asked the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police about the raising of the terror threat level and whether Jews can feel safe in London.
You can never be binary about something like that in any big city, but we're going to do everything we possibly can do to keep them safe.
Sky News uses exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in southern Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
New footage released of the White House dinner shooter showing him scoping out the venue before rushing through security.
We're also going to be looking at the new raft of rights for renters that comes into force today and why some landlords say the new rules go too far.
And later on this hour, Jackie will join us for all the sport, including this, as Nottingham Forest from the driver's seat in the first leg of the Europa Cup semi-final against Villa.
Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us today. The head of the Metropolitan Police was unable to say earlier this morning whether Jews living in London are safe. He reiterated his call for a quick response from government following an attack on 2 Jewish men on Wednesday, having requested 300 extra officers from Number 10.
Well, meanwhile, the terror threat level has been raised from substantial to severe. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but here is what Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley had to say about Jews living in the capital.
You can never be binary about something like that in any big city, but we're going to do everything we possibly can do to keep them safe. The sort of investment and resources that we've temporarily put in North West London, we're going to do everything we can do to secure that for the long term with government.
If I may, there may have been a time when you would have said, yes, of course we're going to keep that community safe, and the fact that you can't say that unequivocally this morning tells us something, doesn't it?
The world is difficult and challenging, and I don't want to make a trivial, glib comment that's unrealistic. But what I can do is say we will do everything possible to keep those communities safe. And we can see the horrible, horrible symptoms of hate crime and, in extreme cases, the sort of attacks we've seen in recent weeks, the horrible, horrible symptoms of anti-Semitism that Jewish communities are facing. And we'll do everything we can to stand with them and protect them.
Well, let's get more on the breaking news that we had this morning, that 45-year-old Essa Suleiman has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. We can cross to Amelia Harper, who's at Westminster Magistrates for us now. So what can you tell us about these charges, Amelia?
Yeah, good morning. Well, that confirmation coming in earlier that Essa Suleiman has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder following that knife attack that happened in Golders Green, where 2 Jewish men were targeted a couple of days ago. The 45-year-old has also been charged with possessing a knife in public. Separately, he has also been charged with attempted murder following a separate incident that happened on the Wednesday in South London in a place called Great Dover Street. Police say that they were called to an altercation at just before 9 a.m. So Essa Suleiman has been remanded into custody and he will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later today. He is a British national who was born in Somalia. And just to remind our viewers exactly what unfolded a few days ago, 2 Jewish men were targeted in an attack. The first victim is 34-year-old Shlomi Rand, who has now been released from hospital. And the second victim is 76-year-old Moshe Shine. And the suspect involved in that attack was tasered before being arrested. As I said, he's been remanded into custody and will appear here in a few hours' time.
Amelia, thanks very much indeed.
Now, as we've been saying, the terror threat level has been raised to severe for the first time since 2021, meaning another attack is considered highly likely following, of course, the stabbing in Golders Green on Wednesday. Well, here's what the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police had to say about the threat level.
Can you tell us whether that threat level was raised because of specific intelligence about a planned attack?
So no, this is more about a rising tide. So what we've seen is the rising amount of caseload that the joint teams that sort of are coordinated from London across the country of policing and MI5, the caseload they're working on together, about 3/4 of the caseload is Islamist-related terrorism, groups like ISIS, about a quarter of it is extreme right. There's a few other marginal bits around the edges. That's all been slowly rising, that caseload. And it's that context, as well as the pressures brought by global events and how that agitates some of these issues, that's led the independent body that looks at these things to tip the threshold into severe. Public shouldn't immediately change their behaviours, but...
Well, here with us is our crime commentator, Martin Brunt. Very good morning to you,
Morning,
Martin. I wonder what you made of the interview with Sir Mark Rowley and what he said specifically there about the terror threat, which, of course, has been raised to severe for the first time since 2021.
Yeah, I mean, he was simply, I suppose, echoing what we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday and from the head of counter-terror policing, Lawrence Taylor, who've talked about this rising tide of caseloads. There are a number of incidents that we are aware of. I mean, only yesterday there was a young man convicted in court of a conspiracy. He was planning to launch a gun attack on some targets that he had identified as race haters. And I think that's an indication of the kind of threat from the far right, for instance. And I think the Commissioner said that about a quarter of the current threats are coming from the far right. The vast majority of them coming from Islamic extremism, and there are other groups in a very small way who also pose a threat. It's something that's been coming, and I suppose the events in Golders Green were the trigger for the Joint Analysis Committee to suddenly raise that level. We don't know how long the level will be raised at. The last time when it went up in 2021, I think it was in place for about 3 months. And again, everybody's saying there's no specific threat, but it's just the amalgamation and the growing tide of threats that's prompted them to do that.
Yeah, he used that phrase, rising tide, quite a few times in our conversation. He also referred to and spoke about the policing operation itself, the arrests on Wednesday. There's been some political criticism that his officers have come in for. He was defensive of his officers and said they did the right thing and it was appropriate. What did you make of the way that he responded to that and just the fact that he made the comments in the first place?
Well, he's been accused of entering politics by writing that letter to Zach Balansky in response to criticism of the arrest. I don't think he has. I think I agree with the Commissioner. He hasn't entered politics. I had a word with him before he came into the studio, and he said, look, he entered my territory. It's not me entering his territory. He would have written that same letter against those kind of criticism to any high-profile figure, any community leader and so forth. The fact that Zach Balansky is a political leader of the Green Party, I think is not the most important thing. I mean, from day one, the Commissioner's big mission has been to root out bad officers in his force, you know, and he's been quite successful at that. But he's also just as tough in defending the good officers, and I think that's what really wound him up. That comment that was passed on through Polanski, that he wanted to show that his officers were very brave, and he made the point, you know, puffer jacket. The guy was wearing a rucksack. They didn't know what this terror suspect had on him. So extreme force in some circumstances, he says, is justified.
And I think we can hear the bit where he talked about the letter that he wrote to Zach Balansky. Let's have a listen.
I'm not getting involved in politics. I'm dealing with operations. I need my officers to have confidence to tackle the most difficult and dangerous individuals. Of course, there's always going to be sort of eccentricity and nonsense online. But if an eminent person steps into operational policing and sort of criticises officers in a way that can undermine their confidence to act, I need to support that. And I'm grateful for all the support members of the public have offered on the back of the letter I published yesterday.
Heard that, but you recognise it could be seen by some as thin end of the wedge because you, Commissioner, or not, if not you, your successor, could feel the need to get involved more in sort of commenting on the things that politicians say.
That'd be wrong. So this is about an operation matter. He has stepped into operational policing with his criticism and his inaccuracies, and I need to put that straight.
Commissioner there defending his police. In the meantime, he also talked about his calls for having more officers to do the job he needs to do in order to keep people safe and protect them. He talked about 300, didn't he?
Yes, he said he'd already spoken to government in the wake of the announcement of 25 million extra pounds, in the wake of what's happened in Golders Green. It's no secret that the Met is understaffed, like a lot of police forces. And in fact, the Metropolitan Police, 2 or 3 years ago, when there was this 20,000 uplift, or proposed 20,000 uplift recruitment across the country of more police officers, the Met Force was one of those that failed to meet its target. So I say it's no surprise that he needs more officers. And, you know, with politicians saying that we are going to keep the Jewish community safe, his argument is that, OK, I'm prepared to do that, but I do need some extra resources.
Yeah, we'll see where that argument or conversation goes. Yeah, thanks very much indeed,
Martin, thank you very much for that. And also, when we're speaking to Samark Aroli, we talked about the protests that are coming up on the 16th of May. There's a Nakba Day protest organised by pro-Palestinian groups, and also a Unite the Kingdom protest organised by Stephen Yaxley Lennon, goes by Tommy Robinson on that day, as well as the FA Cup final. Now, there is some concern about those protests, not least coming from the reviewer of terrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, who is concerned about that pro-Palestine protest in particular, as he sees extremism and anti-Semitism rising.
All of these marches have had in them expressions of hatred, and I think the Prime Minister was right today to say, yeah, it may not be every person who's carrying something saying globalise the Intifada, but the people who are standing next to them are not exactly saying stop it. So I think that a moratorium on pro-Palestine marches is the right thing to do, because otherwise there is a risk that some new individual will look at what people are saying publicly and getting away with saying publicly, and they'll go, well, I know what, I've got to do something about those people. I've got to do something about those Jews and those Zionists and those Israelis. I've got to take my own personal steps.
Well, we also asked the Justice Minister about those comments. Here is Alex Davis-Jones.
I would say that the right to protest is a fundamental one in our country, and it is one that I am proud that we have and one that I will fiercely defend and protect. But ultimately, we have seen these marches be hijacked by certain individuals who are seeking to cause and sow division and hatred in our country. And I would say to anyone that is seeking to march at the moment to please reflect on what is happening in our country, how certain communities and individuals are feeling. And as I've said, it is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that we do better, that we are good citizens, and that we seek to prevent any cause of hatred, alarm, distress or intimidation at this time or whenever.
But you're not looking to ban the marches?
We will take action if we need to, and the Home Secretary did ban a march just last month to prevent that dangerous alarm, intimidation and threat that I've talked about.
Of course, plenty more coverage in the aftermath of that stabbing in Golders Green, as well as the response from government and policing throughout the day here on Sky News, as well as on our website. Now, Sky News has used exclusive data to map the scale of destruction in the south of Lebanon as Israel continues its campaign there.
Now, the equivalent of 50,000 homes have been razed over weeks of bombardment, wiping out entire villages. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford has this report.
This isn't Gaza, this is Lebanon, and just some of the dozens of villages in the south that have been virtually wiped out by Israel in a matter of weeks. All done, according to Israel, to eradicate Hezbollah from the border area. Most of the IDF activity has been concentrated between the Lebanese-Israel border and what Israel is calling a forward defense line.
We will clean Hezbollah and its supporters from southern Lebanon with security control of the IDF over the entire Litani area.
The Israeli military has claimed it's targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. But what we're seeing on the ground looks like a much broader strategy to permanently clear this area of Lebanon. And there's a growing body of visual evidence.
It is a kind of national ethnic cleansing, what is happening there.
The ceasefire is in name only. Both sides deny it. Both sides accuse the other of breaching it. And the Lebanese army cites Israeli bombing on a daily basis. Still, the demolitions go on apace, and Hezbollah is continuing its attacks. As part of this investigation, we worked with the independent investigative outlet Centre for Information Resilience. The centre found at least 29 villages have suffered extensive damage since the 2nd of March. That was the day Hezbollah fired 6 rockets on Israel in support of Tehran. In reality, most of these villages and all the homes in them have been razed. Most sit roughly 10 kilometres inside Lebanese territory, a swathe of land which Israel is calling its security zone and has marked out with a yellow line. To assess the scale of destruction from a bird's eye view, we turned to data scientists at the University of Oregon. By analysing satellite imagery, they found at least 2,154 buildings across Lebanon were destroyed in Israeli attacks between the 28th of February and the 13th of April. Lebanese officials say that amounts to more than 50,000 housing units. Sky News's own analysis found that nearly half of that damage is outside the self-declared Israeli security zone. We verified footage circulating online from villages inside the Israeli so-called buffer zone that show not only airstrikes, but massive controlled demolitions, wiping out entire neighbourhoods, including homes, roads and schools. Controlled demolitions have very different characteristics to airstrikes. Weapons analysts told us a cable is often seen lighting up right before the explosion. The impact is also very distinct in terms of scale and projection of the blast, as well as the way the buildings collapse. The IDF told us it takes all feasible measures to protect civilians. They replied to our queries about the high number of civilian deaths and the widespread destruction of civilian buildings by saying it issued advanced warnings of strikes. And they insist it only destroys military objectives, although it rarely provides evidence to support these claims. Without detailing the absolute military necessity for destroying the homes, the schools and mosques which are being levelled, there could be further violations of international law. The IDF insists its troops are only in Lebanon right now to protect Israeli citizens from Hezbollah and will remain there until the group is destroyed. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
Now, coming up, we're going to be talking to the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Russell Finlay, about the devolved elections.
Yeah, and stay with us because we've also had quite a powerful intervention by a former Prime Minister around pensions.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget.
Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Now, the Tony Blair Institute has said that the pensions triple lock should be scrapped, which is not a brand new idea from anyone, but Tony Blair has decided this morning to have this published and intervene in what is potentially the pension system going to grow into quite a political issue, if not at this election, certainly elections going forward.
Yeah, and we should remind everyone what the triple lock is. It's basically that the basic and new state pensions will rise every April by whichever is highest, whether it's inflation, average wage growth, or 2.5%. And the political parties are basically saying, no, we're going to stick to it. Obviously, mindful that pensioners, if they feel worse off because their pensions aren't very high, it's harder for them to go out and get more work and generate more income. So they're saying they'll stick to the triple lock, but he's arguing for a kind of lifespan fund that he's talking about. He says it'll be a more flexible model that builds entitlements through work, through caring and through study.
Yeah, and of course this all brings up the sort of idea about generational fairness. As you could probably guess, the polls suggest that over 65s are very much in favour of the triple lock by some 82%, whereas 18 to 24-year-olds, just 21% of those guys are in favour. Of course, younger people having a much higher tax burden. The worry is that when they get to pension age, the provisions for their pensions will just not be there. And is that fair, generationally? But it's going to take a very brave government that decides to make any changes to this, which is why I think I've got all the main parties saying that they're not going to make any changes. Because, again, those stats, over 65s, of course, vote at twice the rate of 18 to 24-year-olds in elections. So all politicians will be thinking about those votes and whether or not they make such a big change.
Yeah, but government's also wanting to save money from the welfare bill as well. So it's interesting to see whether those arguments get any traction. Now, throughout the run-up to local elections next week, we're talking to all party leaders. And this morning, we're joined by Russell Finlay, leader of the Scottish Conservatives. We can cross over live to Glasgow now and speak to him. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning.
Morning.
Talk us through your expectations. I mean, just how painful are these elections likely to be for the Tories in Scotland?
Well, it's a tough gig we've inherited. Kenny and I, around about the same time, taking charge of the party. A very difficult set of circumstances, and we knew that this election would be testing. But we're confident that we're going into this election as the second largest party in Scotland. We defied the pollsters and the pundits in 2021 and 2016. It was votes for the Scottish Conservatives that crucially stopped an SNP majority. Now, John Swinney is arrogantly telling everyone that he's already not just won this election, but that he will win a majority. And with that majority, the first thing that he will do is demand another referendum from the weakest Prime Minister in living memory, Sir Keir Starmer. So people across Scotland know that using their peach-coloured ballot paper to back the Scottish Conservatives, that's how we stopped the SNP in the past two elections, and that's how they can do so next Thursday.
The difference you've got this time, Russell Finlay, and morning to you, is that you've got a Reform Party that seems to be a bit on the surge. How are you able to counter the challenge of reform in Scotland?
Well, we just keep telling the truth. We point out to pro-union voters who are sick and tired of an SNP government who have been in charge of all of Scotland's public services for almost 2 decades that we have the policies and the ideas to make work pay, to reduce taxation, and point out what reform are all about. What are they all about? They claim to be conservative, but some of their economic policies are anything but. They claim to be unionist, but they are fielding in this election pro-independence candidates. Nigel Farage has said he thinks that another referendum could be reasonable, and Lord Offord, his appointed leader in Scotland, has said that he wants to work with nationalists. Now, this is either just dangerously naive or complacent, because we know from bitter experience that the SNP, the only thing that motivates John Swinney and the SNP is breaking up the United Kingdom. And therefore, we can be the only party who can be relied upon to stand up to them and to stop that.
You've been very critical in your answers of Keir Starmer, and the Labour Party is not polling well at the moment. So shouldn't the Scottish Tories be benefiting from that? Why aren't they doing better in the polls as a result of the government's seeming unpopularity, according to the polling?
Well, Scotland has got a multi-party system. Part of the election is proportional, so we are used to having many parties in the field. The difficulty now with reform is a vote for reform in Scotland is only going to make an SNP government more likely. In terms of Labour, every single election since devolution, their number of MSPs have gone down. Labour have never shaken this arrogance that they're entitled to rule in Scotland. The Scottish Conservatives have been the #2 party in the Parliament for a decade. Now, I completely acknowledge that times are difficult, but I think when people give us a fair hearing and they see a party who have got a responsible, costed manifesto, the only party that's addressing the SNP's out-of-control state benefits bill, the only party even talking about a looming £5 billion black hole in Scotland's public finances, and detailed plans to bring people's taxes down. It might shock your viewers to discover that in Scotland, if you're paid just over £33,000 a year, you pay more income tax. Now, if you're on £50,000 a year, and that includes many people working in frontline services such as police officers and nurses, you pay £1,500 a year more, only for John Swinney's SNP government to waste this money on an obscene and gargantuan scale.
Russell, you mentioned being the #2 party. Some of the polls suggest that you're going to lose that official opposition status at these upcoming elections. If that happens, whose fault will it be?
Well, look, we understand that we've come out of the general election in 2024 having suffered the worst result in living memory, if not history. And both Kenny and I knew that there would be no quick fix. It would take a lot of time for our party to heal, a lot of time to show the public that we understand and admit where we went wrong, and rebuild that public trust, rebuild that credibility. And that's what Kenny and I are doing tirelessly. And this election, you know, there's a lot going on. By any measure, the SNP should be kicked out of power. Look at today, for example, the misinformation being peddled by John Swinney, claiming credit for ending the US whisky tariffs, when in fact it was His Majesty the King that did so. This government is completely rotten. They waste money on an obscene scale. There's a £5 billion hole in the public finances, and there is going to be more of the same. And if they do win that majority, the last thing the people of Scotland want and the last thing our country needs is to be plunged yet again into this constitutional chaos, that nightmare scenario. And that's why I'm urging people to use their peach-coloured ballot paper to back the Scottish Conservatives.
OK, well, Russell Finlay, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, we appreciate your time this morning. And as you were saying, we're talking to all the leaders in the run-up to the elections next week.
Thanks, Russell. All right, well, stay with us because we're going to speak to Ben Toomey, who's Chief Exec of Generation Rent, about those big reforms that are coming in today.
We're just going to show you the pictures from Westminster Magistrates Court that are coming in the last few minutes. We don't have confirmation, but we believe that this is the suspect in the Golders Green case who has been charged this morning with 3 counts of attempted murder.
Yes, he has indeed. A 45-year-old from Camberwell charged with 2 counts of attempted murder with a bladed article and another count of attempted murder earlier in the day on Wednesday following those attacks. He is due in front of magistrates at Westminster later on today, and he understands that these are the latest pictures of the police vehicles transporting that 45-year-old Essa Suleiman to court to face those charges.
Now, the millions of renters in England will benefit from new legislation that comes into force today, which is aimed at giving renters greater rights and protections against evictions and rent hikes.
Yeah, among the new rules, landlords can no longer increase rent more than once a year or ask for more than a month's rent in advance.
Bidding wars between prospective tenants will be banned.
Landlords won't be able to refuse tenants who have children or who are claiming benefits.
Plus, tenants will be able to roll on their contract month to month and be able to end them with 2 months' notice. So let's talk through these changes. Here with us is Ben Toomey, who's a Chief Executive of Generation Rent. Good morning to you.
Morning, Ben.
How good a morning is it? Is this welcome news?
This is a great morning. I'm immensely proud of every single renter that has campaigned for many years to see this change, because this morning people woke up to a whole raft of new rights and protections. It's a turning point in the relationship between renters and landlords, and we'll get into some of the detail, I'm sure, but fundamentally, you have more security in your home, you have more stability in your home than you've had for a very long time indeed.
Well, Ben, get us into some of the details then. You've been working on this and your organisation working on this for quite some time. What are the main, most important points you think for renters to understand this morning?
Well, the big headline is that Section 21, so-called no-fault evictions, are ending. That was where you could be evicted and kicked out of your home with just 2 months' notice, and the landlord didn't need to give any reason. So if you find one of those landing on your doormat this morning, it doesn't mean anything anymore. The landlord can still evict you, for example, for rent arrears or antisocial behaviour, or if they wanted to move into the home or to sell the home, but they have to give 4 months' notice, and it has to be for a valid reason. It also can't happen in the first 12 months of your tenancy, so there's much greater protection in that sense.
So greater protection, being able to stay in your home. What about around rent?
So the changes around rent, there's a number of changes that are going to be really helpful. One is that you can no longer pit tenant against tenant as a landlord to drive up the price. So bidding wars are being banned, as you said. You can't demand multiple months' rent up front. And if someone does challenge a rent increase, then there is a tribunal that will test whether or not that rent is about right. They'll test it against the market, which is advertised prices. So obviously that is really high anyway, but it is a slightly better protection for people who could save more than £1,000 based on the averages of what those tribunals do judge.
I mean, those kind of things, I guess, will be kind of groundbreaking for people who are trying to rent a flat in expensive cities like London. We must do the other side of it, though, and landlords. There is, I guess, some concern among landlords that this is going to make it harder for them to be able to rent out their properties, and that actually could have a knock-on effect, meaning that the housing available to people may reduce.
I really think that landlords have nothing to fear from this legislation unless they're planning on breaking the new laws. The new laws, just to remind you, what is it that would scare a landlord from not being able to kick someone out without giving a reason? Surely they've got a reason. Why would they need to start a bidding war if they've already advertised a reasonable price for the home? Why would they need to deny people the right to have a pet without giving a good reason again? All of these things are basic protections. Good landlords will already not be wanting to cause that kind of harm and suffering that we've experienced over decades as renters, and it's only those that don't want to lift a finger to support their tenants, don't want to earn the money that we're paying them in huge amounts, that will have something to fear. If they sell, not the end of the world, because that home doesn't fall into the ground. We're still going to be able to maybe buy it as a first-time buyer, maybe another landlord buys it who wants to play by the rules and wants to support their tenants.
That's interesting that you say that. You think it's no bad thing if landlords do decide to sell out, but isn't there a risk that that housing stock doesn't stay available for renters, and if you've got fewer houses on the market, prices go up?
Well, the last thing we need is landlords who don't want to be landlords. They're not going to do the job correctly. It's an
but you need the
important
properties
responsibility.
available as well, don't you?
We need more homes. We don't necessarily need more landlords. We've had a doubling of the size of the private rented sector in the last 20 years. That hasn't done anyone any favours. You see that from the stories that you hear from renters all the time. But we do need more homes. The last time we reached the government's target of 300,000 a year was 1977, 50 years ago. If it could be done then, it can be done now, and that needs to come hand in hand with this new law.
We'll see if the government meet that target. Was it 1.5 million homes by the end of the Parliament? I don't think they're quite on track for it at the moment, so we will see. And we are holding them to account on that. Is there anything in this legislation that means that homes have to be of a certain standard? We've done all sorts of stories about infestations, about mould, etc., them not being habitable places where families are having to live. Anything in this that will protect people?
There is, but most of it doesn't come into law today. From today, councils will be able to leverage higher fines on landlords where there's major hazards, for example. But the Decent Home Standard, which is supposed to bring in a basic minimum of standards for homes, isn't coming in until 2035. So it's
that's a long way off.
Yeah, very long way off. We're hoping it comes in sooner. There's also Awab's Law, which is the timescales given to landlords in social housing to make sure they respond to mould and damp, which can be really dangerous. In the case of Awab, it was fatal, who was a toddler who tragically passed away in Greater Manchester. That's coming into private renting too, but we haven't got a date for that yet. We're really encouraging politicians to do that as soon as possible because the risks are so obvious, and all it means is the current law, where you have to deal with hazards as a landlord anyway. You just need to set a timescale so that tenants can tell their landlords, OK, well, now it's been this many days. We really do need you to deal with this because it is the law.
And, of course, people of all ages rent property, but specifically, as far as young people are concerned, how would you describe how tough it is for young people to afford decent housing at the moment?
It's incredibly difficult. So the average amount of our income going to our landlords is 36% at the moment. So it's a huge chunk of money in which you're not investing in your own asset. You're basically losing that every single month, and it gets in the way of that dream of home ownership. So the idea of saving for a deposit for a home is like pushing up a boulder, up a hill that keeps getting steeper and steeper, mainly because the rents keep getting steeper and steeper as well. So it's holding us back.
Yeah. Having a big impact.
So, yes, final point. This is for England, right? What about the other nations in the country?
Yes, so England's actually playing catch-up with Scotland, where many of these changes had already happened. In Wales, there's a few things that were already much better than England. For example, you get a 6-month notice period for eviction, but you can still be evicted for no reason. So we're hoping that will change in Wales soon. In Northern Ireland as well, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made to reach this kind of standard of protection. It's really worrying that renters across the UK might have a bit of a postcode lottery after this, so we'd encourage every government to look at what they can do, and particularly after next week, where there's elections in Scotland and Wales, those new governments should really hit the ground running and protect renters in these ways.
OK, well, Ben Toomey, really interesting to talk to you from Generation Rent. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Now, the Trump administration is claiming that the US-Iran ceasefire, which began in early April, has terminated hostilities with Iran, arguing that that means the war has come to an end.
Well, yes. Essentially, President Trump is facing a deadline of today to end the war, or else he has to make the case to Congress for extending it. But the conflict does look set to continue regardless. The American blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is still in place, of course.
Well, the King was in the States earlier this week. He's now finished his 4-day visit there. And it was a mission to mend the strained relationship between Washington and London.
Well, the tour continues with the King touching down in Bermuda, marking his first visit to a British overseas territory as sovereign. The visit to America was warmly received by President Trump and even saw tariffs lifted on Scotch whisky, which Buckingham Palace said it would toast with a dram. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundar reports.
So your journey is almost over.
Warm words, a fond farewell, and for the president, certainly one special relationship he cherishes. Does the King feel the same way? We'll never know, but he's charmed the White House at a time of tension between Britain and the US. At Arlington Cemetery, a moment to remember the fallen from the Civil War to more modern conflict. And then to Virginia's aptly named Front Royal. Remarkably, this town's the first time the couple have met the crowds. 250 years ago, they probably wouldn't have welcomed the king like this. But here now, a block party celebrating America's birthday. So you write to the Queen?
Yes, probably a number of people do. And she's very kind to write back. And I'm so terribly fond of her, really, and so fond of the king. I don't know why I say really, it's not the least bit surprising. They spend so much time doing things that really matter.
I think they both exemplify so much civility that you don't see in all phases of government right now.
If the King and Queen were wondering what Americans made of them, here at least there's little doubt. One thing's clear, this state visit has been great PR for the palace, a personal win for the king after so much negativity around Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The king's speeches were well received and widely praised. He delivered the diplomatic message. But the bigger question, politically, will this trip make any difference? So it's been a busy 4 days, so much to see, but also so much to carefully say in what's been his most significant state visit to date. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Virginia.
I'll stay in the States because new footage has revealed just how quickly that gunman was able to get through security at the Washington Hilton for the White House Correspondents' Dinner attack, where Donald Trump, of course, was in attendance.
Yeah, it's extraordinary footage. It shows the man dashing through the security checkpoint in a matter of seconds, giving officers only moments to draw their weapons. This is 31-year-old Cole Allen, who's facing charges of attempting to assassinate President Trump at the press gala. He's yet to enter a plea.
Yeah, he's due in court again on the 11th of May.
Should we check on the weather?
Let's do it.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I ticked that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, more warm sunshine today, but there are going to be some showers around, some of them thundery. Then it's going to turn cooler and more unsettled for the bank holiday weekend. So that's the bad news. Let's go back to some good news, because eastern Britain will see the best of the morning sunshine, while further west there will be more cloud around. There'll be a few showers across western Britain, with more developing over parts of Ireland by lunchtime. After the recent blustery weather, winds will be much lighter, making it feel very warm, especially in the sunshine, and temperatures could climb to around 27 degrees in the muggy south.
Nice.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Jackie's joined us.
27 degrees.
I know. How are you going to spend your muggy 27 degrees?
It's a shame, isn't it? Most people will be at work today, they can't enjoy it. And then tomorrow, when they're off and it's a bank holiday, the weather's absolutely rubbish.
Typical.
Yeah.
Just typical.
It makes you happy to be working the bank holiday weekend.
Swap it around
doesn't
next
Oh, yeah, well, we're working through it, aren't
I'll
we?
see what I can do.
Yeah.
Get it fixed.
Anyway, should we talk sport?
Yeah, last night, really good night for Forest in particular,
Absolutely,
and Crystal
right.
Palace really in particular. So we're talking about that. Good night in Europe for the British clubs. Also, it's been a really bad week for Live Golf, bad year, bad 4 years. I don't know. The press release finally came out yesterday announcing that the Saudis would be pulling their money and it would be a different model going forward, if that's going to be possible. We'll talk about that. And it was a good night again for Luke Littler in the dance.
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die? This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
A
unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military, and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination? Of course. It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Jackie's here with all the sport.
Morning, Jackie.
And good night of football last night.
I bring good news. Maybe not if you're a Villa fan, but if you're a Forest fan. Pretty good news in Europe last night. It was really interesting and quite exciting to see two British clubs facing each other in Europe. It doesn't happen very often in the Europa League. Forest against Villa at the City grounds. It was a good game of football, but Unai Emery was really, really angry afterwards. He felt like VAR had let his side down, and he felt like Ollie Watkins had suffered a really bad tackle, and that Elliot Anderson should have been sent off. He was really cross, and I think actually, you know, we're going to have a look at the foul in a second. VAR has been at the centre of all the European matches this week. Let's take a look at the action, as we may as well. We've started. Let's have a look. OK, here's the foul again. Ollie Watkins, Forest midfielder, Elliot Anderson going unpunished. We can have a look at the replay and you can make up your own mind. But it was basically studs up. And it was looked at and nothing happened. And that was why he was so cross. Villa keeper Emi Martinez made a absolutely brilliant reaction save to deny Forest Igor Jesus clawing the ball off the line to prevent them taking an early lead. How brilliant was that? And that's probably kept Villa in this tie. Chris Wood scoring the only goal of the game. It came from the penalty spot after Luca Dean handles inside the area. Only he will know why he did put his arm up, but he did. He thought it was out, I think, and then the ball came off his arm. Brilliant penalty. Next leg, Villa Park on Thursday. And in the Conference League, Crystal Palace, they've got one foot in the final after a 3-1 win against Shakhtar Donetsk. Ismail Assar scored the fastest goal in the competition's history after just 21 seconds. And then followed two more goals. So, you know, they're pretty much almost home and hosed. But I don't know about what you were thinking about for Forest, but it's interesting because, you know, they're fighting in Europe. They've got the advantage going to the second leg, but they're also fighting for Premier League survival as well, which I guess to them, you know, is more important.
Staying in the division, I think, would be more...
I think they're OK. I mean, this is what they're... This is a 9th match unbeaten, which is a really good run. And
it's a good run. They look
football.
good. Still a bit of nervousness ahead of Monday night, which is the first time a European team will have to play on a Monday before their return leg, which is upsetting lots of Forest fans.
But on the upside, though, you get plenty of time to recover from that match. I think they made quite a lot of changes for that match. So, yeah interesting times. And it's nicely poised, I would say, going into the second leg of that.
Is Ollie Watkins all right? I just had a quick look. He's not injured, is he, after that challenge?
I think he's OK.
For England.
I haven't rung him, though, so...
Hope you're right, Ollie.
He'll be watching. He'll send us a message.
Let's talk golf, because yesterday the press release came out to announce what everybody in golf's been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks, is that the Saudis, the public investment funds, have pulled their funding of Live Golf. Live Golf, setting up 4 years ago, being the absolute disruptor to world golf, disrupting in many ways, disrupting even small things like friendships were broken because really famous players who said that they wouldn't leave, the European tours and the US tours, they did, and they joined Live Golf, saying it was for new opportunities and growing the game, blah, 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 but really it was just for a massive, big, fat, huge, eye-watering paycheck.
How much was it?
Well, John Rahm's was reported to be about 300 million
That's a lot
pounds
of money.
or dollars, depending on which report you read. And it did also other things as well, in that it forced the US PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, which is the European Tour, to up their funds as well. So the prize pots of those tournaments had to be raised to sort of keep players in their remit and to stop players from defecting, which is unsustainable as well for them. So there were disruptions all over the place. And yesterday it was announced there's going to be a new model, the Saudi money is being pulled, and they will have to find future investors. So the question is, where does it leave people like John Rahm? Where does it leave other golfers who joined to play like Tyrrell Hassan? Do they stay after this summer? Is there a possibility? Do they try and join the European Tour again? Lots of golfers could do that, but they would have to pay their fines. John Rahm has not paid his fines. He has fallen out with the European Tour. And if you want to join the American Tour again, you've got to serve a 1-year ban and also jump through hoops and also pay fines. So, interesting times. Donald Trump had something to say about it last night, which was very interesting considering how many things are going on in the world. But he was asked about players leaving Live and going back to join the main tours.
The tour wants to have the best player. You can't have the best player that they're boycotting. Now, they may do something, a little bit, but they'll all be back on tour and it'll be great.
We should also mention as well, massive weekend in football. I mean, it's going to be a massive weekend in the Premier League from here till the end of the season. But in the Championship, it is the final day of the main season and so many things still to be decided. Will Ipswich go up? They're in the box seat. Coventry are already up as champions. You've got Wrexham fighting for a playoff place against Middlesbrough, who are fighting to go up automatically to the Premier League. That is going to be, I think, the match of the weekend. Do you think Ryan Reynolds will turn up?
Why not?
I mean, it's a pretty big match.
Yeah, it's a big
if they manage to land a playoff spot.
Yeah, get there.
I mean, I know we show pictures of them every time we look from Wrexham.
Yes.
But it's kind of fun. In the darts, Luke Littler won again last night. And, all round it was a pretty big night of sport, to be honest.
Yeah, must be exhausted. He's going to have a lie down.
5 wins for him.
Right. Before we go, we're going to show you this from Paris. Jackie, stay there, because I want to get your thoughts about what happened to this poor, unfortunate trainee bus driver who ended up with his vehicle, or their vehicle, I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, in the Seine.
I know. Hit a parked car, apparently, and veered off the road. They're really keen to stress that drug and alcohol tests came back negative. We don't actually know the cause of the incident. 4 passengers on board, all safe. But a huge operation. More than 90 firefighters, divers and police took part.
It is.
Oh, dear.
Not a water bus or boat. And I wonder if he's going to get the job after this.
Top stories next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?